A very good morning, colleagues. Our esteemed guests, please can we take our seats? The House is hereby called to order. All delegates and our esteemed guests to this second day of our Congress. I hope you had a very nice evening yesterday. Already we have a lot of items on our agenda. And as usual, I will solicit for your understanding, but importantly also for us to try to respect our time schedule. So once again, colleagues, delegates, you are welcome. Is the video ready? Yeah. We are going to receive a message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Is going to be a video message for about, I think, not more than 3 minutes. So it's time for us to listen to the UN Secretary General, please.
I'm pleased to send my greetings to the 5th International Trade Union Confederation's World Congress. Let me start by congratulating your outgoing General Secretary, Sharan Burrow, for her steadfast leadership. Throughout her life and career, Sharan has been a fierce fighter and inspiring voice for social justice and for the workers of the world. The world needs more leaders like Sharan, just as it needs strong and vibrant trade unions. My friends, your Congress arrives at a time of great peril for people and planet. Working people are suffering from inflation, rising inequalities, eroding food and energy security, and skyrocketing costs of living. Women, for whom Sharan has been such a powerful voice, have been worst hit by the cascading crisis the world faces. And solidarity, particularly by decision makers in government and business, is missing in action. The focus of your Congress, a new social contract, perfectly echoes the messages of my report on our common agenda. It offers a roadmap for inclusive solutions to help deliver peace, progress, and the Sustainable Development Goals. We need unprecedented investments in decent work, health, education, and social protection systems. The Global Accelerator for Jobs, Social Protection, and Just Transitions is a good example. Our effort to create 400 million new jobs, formalize at least 1 billion informal jobs, and provide 400 million more people with social protection. We also need to reform a morally bankrupt global financial system and provide developing countries with urgent access to debt relief and financing to recover. We need to tackle inequalities by balancing the scales for women and girls, as well as migrants and refugees. We need to uphold the rights of trade unions, rights that are coming under increasing pressure by the day, including the right to organize and bargain collectively as defined in the conventions of the International Labour Organization. And we need to dramatically accelerate the transition from planet-killing fossil fuels to renewable energy. This means helping developing countries decarbonize their economies, build resilient infrastructure, and protect people from the devastation of climate change. Companies and financial institutions must act credibly on their net zero commitments. And this means presenting detailed plans for a just transition, plans that are developed with the employees that include concrete policies and actions on retraining and personal development. A truly just transition is one that leaves no one behind, and one that prevents the continued destruction of our planet and the decimation of workers' living standards that will inevitably result. I urge you to use your powerful voices, influence and networks to push government and business leaders to take the climate crisis seriously and dramatically step up their actions before it's too late. Dear friends, I know the ITUC Constitution pledges support for the UN, and we are committed to supporting working people and their organizations. Our UN country teams benefit greatly from your voice and experience, so please keep engaging with them on the ground. Let's show the world what solidarity in action looks like. Let's keep up the fight for the fair, just and sustainable world our future requires.
Let me then invite Sister Liz Schuler. Please, I skip a very important item, which is obituaries. Let us please observe 2 minutes silence in honor of our colleagues. May the soul of our departed colleagues rest in perfect peace. Let me now invite the chairperson of the Credentials Committee to present the first report of the committee. Liz, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. And I was just looking over those names, folks we've lost, and of course, my predecessor, Rich Trumka, and our dear John Sweeney, who both have passed recently in the last year. So thank you for that. Dear sisters and brothers, good morning, good morning, good morning. As this is the first time that I take the floor, allow me to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and their leaders, past, present, and emerging. I have the privilege to address you on behalf of the Credentials Committee that has appointed me as their spokesperson at our first meeting yesterday. You will find our first report among the Congress documents online, which includes the full list of names of representatives in the committee as proposed by the General Counsel meeting yesterday. I feel honored to share the duty of the Credentials Committee with a very distinguished group of experienced trade union leaders from across the world. I'll read their names. Our committee consists of Francis Atwali of Kotu, Kenya, Zaur Awan of PWF Pakistan, Amal El Amiri of UMT Morocco, Heidi Runa of FH Denmark, Claire Shuban Rupert of CUT Brazil, Shaher Syed of PGFTU Palestine. So, as per Article 16 of the Constitution, we will report to Congress on the composition of delegations and consider any objections to the credentials of delegates. Any credential issues can be brought to room 215 for clarification or rectification. We will also examine the eligibility of nominees for the General Counsel and the posts of General Secretary and auditors in due course. The committee has taken due note of the changes to the Constitution that were put forward by the General Counsel, I believe it was just yesterday, and that will be put before you by the chair of the Standing Orders Committee, which will be coming shortly. So if these amendments are ratified by the Congress at that time, the committee, the Credentials Committee, will be using the amended Constitution as a reference to verify credentials and other issues as they may arise throughout the ongoing Congress. Something that is of note, we will be holding delegations to the updated, strengthened gender quota, and we truly hope that these will allow us to report an improvement in gender participation as compared to previous years. So as of yesterday, there were 933 total participants registered, and nearly half of them identified as women, which is very exciting. That's the total participants, and then out of our 573 registered delegates, exactly half have been identified as women as well. So this is exactly what we want. It's an overall improvement from the last Congress, so we celebrate that, but we are also hopeful that the trend towards gender parity continues as we finalize registration. We also have 122 countries represented at this Congress, which is also very exciting. Since we have more than one candidate for the position of General Secretary, I want to make an important announcement in relation to the deadline to register delegation leaders. So listen carefully. As clarified in Article 31 of the new Constitution, a secret vote to elect the new General Secretary will take place on Sunday, 20th of November, in which each delegation will vote as a unit, with its voting strength being equal to the number of paying members it has affiliated to the ITUC. So, brothers and sisters, for this reason, it is very, very important to ensure that the delegation leader who will cast the votes for the delegation on Sunday at lunchtime, that's when the votes will be cast, please make sure that that person is registered in the accreditation system by Saturday close of business. At that time, the voting system will take the credentials as registered to set up the electronic vote. So again, if any changes are needed for the person who will be representing your delegation and casting that vote, we need to know that as soon as possible. And at the very latest, Saturday at 7 p.m. So hopefully everyone is hearing me. Saturday by 7 p.m. is the deadline if any changes to the delegate who will represent your delegation and cast that vote on Sunday. So please come and see us in room 215 if there are any concerns or any updates that need to take place. So with that, at this stage, we only request Congress to ratify the composition of our Credentials Committee. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for that report. Delegates, can I put forward that we can adopt the report as presented by Liz Schuler? Thank you. Adopted. Next, let me invite Felix Antoni, the chair of the Standing Orders Committee, to also come forward to present their first report.
Colleagues, good morning. I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, their leaders, past, present, and emerging. It is a pleasure and a privilege to again be appointed by the Standing Orders Committee as chair of the committee. The secretary of the committee is Brother Tim Noonan of the ITUC Secretariat. The first report involves ratification by the plenary of the composition of the committee, which is contained in the document 5CO/4/SOC/1. The first report of the committee, which you can find in the document section of the Congress website. In addition, I would like to highlight a few key issues which are contained in that document, which also includes the formal Congress agenda and approval of Congress program, which is on the website as well. For the debate in the plenary, the committee recommends that interventions from delegates should be focused on the contents of the draft Congress statement and on any amendments to it. The committee recommends a time limit for the plenary interventions by delegates of 3 minutes. Also, given the large number of organizations and the limited time available, delegations should limit themselves to 1 intervention per organization in the plenary. And if there is time remaining towards the end of the Congress, further interventions from delegates from the same organization would be possible. Requests to speak in the plenary should be submitted to the Request Speak desk at the entry of the plenary, at the latest by 1800 hours on 19th of November. I repeat that the request should be submitted to the Speak desk at the entry of the plenary at the latest by 6 p.m. on the 19th of November, which is today. Please note that the Congress live streaming facility is there for speeches for the record by delegates, and we recommend that affiliates take full advantage of that facility. The time limit for Congress live speeches would be 4 minutes. There are also plenty of opportunities to join discussions in the Congress forums in the afternoons. The committee considered the issue of possible emergency resolutions, and I would draw your attention to the provisions of the Standing Orders document on that matter. Nevertheless, there may be good reason to consider one or possible more special extra resolutions for submitting to the plenary for consideration. Any such proposals, including any proposed amendments to the draft Congress statement, should be submitted in one of the 4 official languages by 6 p.m., that is 1800 hours this evening, to enable the committee to carry out its work and bring final proposals back for adoption in the plenary in the last day of Congress, 22nd November. The amendments are to be submitted to the email address, and I will just state the email address, which reads amendments with an S at the end at ITUC-CSI-org. I will repeat that. It's amendments in plural at ITUC-CSI-org. Colleagues, I would draw your attention to the section in the written report of the first meeting of the committee concerning election of the new ITUC General Secretary. Sister Liz has already alluded to this in her report, but I think it's worth me repeating this so that we're very clear on how we will move forward on this issue. This, which will take place in the early afternoon of 20th of November. Please read that section carefully. The committee approved the use of the confidential and electronic voting system, which is called assembly voting, for the election. The election is carried out under the supervision of the chairs of the Credential and the Standing Orders Committee, and will provide further information on the procedure in good time before the election. It is the official delegation leaders who vote. And if there is any change to the leader of your delegation, the Secretariat must be informed by 7 p.m. 1900 hours on Saturday, 19th of November. Of course, any cases of force majeure after the deadline would be treated sympathetically. Colleagues, there are a number of other procedural issues contained in the above-mentioned document, and I want to highlight a couple of them. Firstly, if any organization wants to circulate a document in the Congress, they must first have the approval of the Standing Orders Committee, in line with the provisions of the Constitution. Secondly, I draw your attention to the protocol for reducing risk of COVID-19 transmission at the Congress, which is on the Congress website. You must have all been provided with a FP2 mask and a rapid antigen test in your Congress bags. Please use them. In particular, wear your mask in the meeting areas of Congress. Colleagues, the next meeting of the Standing Orders Committee will be at 8 a.m. on Saturday, which is tomorrow morning. Chair, I thank you for your attention and commend the report and its decisions for your approval, for the approval by the plenary.
Thank you very much, Philip, for the first report of your committee. Colleagues, may I then put it forward for adoption? I didn't see any hands, so adopted. Thank you very much. Let me further invite Felix to then present the second report of his committee. Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The second report of the committee. Chair, the 26th meeting of the General Council approved a series of amendments to the Constitution and the Standing Orders based on a report from a special working party set up to review the Constitution. A working party which worked hard and produced excellent results. The amendments are visible as track changes in the document on this matter on the Congress website. I wish to move that those amendments be adopted by the plenary, after which they would come into effect, immediate effect. Chair.
Thank you for this report. Rengo Japan have indicated to take the floor. I therefore give the floor to Rengo Japan. You have the floor, please.
議長、ありがとうございます。音声通じているでしょうか。今、フェリックス委員長から触れていただきました規約改正の問題に関して一言発言をいたしたいと思います。規約改正案の策定に至る過程では、作業部会が設置され、私もその一員として積極的に参画をしてまいりました。数多くの提案もさせていただきました。 作業部会各位の真摯な議論に改めて敬意を表したいと思います。また、それらを的確に包み込んでいただいたカール・ペター座長、そして改正案の取りまとめに最も苦労されたオーエン書記委員長、技術的なサポートで部会を支えていただいた事務局の皆様に心より感謝を申し上げます。改正案の趣旨でありますけれども、結成からまだ14年の ITUC が、働く者の大同団結によって世界の労働者の幸福を実現をしていくために、その基盤を揺るぎないものとしていくためにの不可欠な過程であると認識をしています。とりわけ、加盟組織、地域組織の思いをしっかりと運動の真ん中に据えていくためにも、この規約改正の精神がしっかりと生かされることを切望をいたします。今回の規約改正議論が実を結ぶこととなった一つのきっかけは、前回の大会における分断と混乱でありました。書記長選挙が大きく2つの陣営で争われ、お互いがお互いに釈然としない存念を持つという不幸な事態でありました。もちろん、民主主義のルールとして、選挙における立候補が積極的に行われ、規約に沿った投票行為が生じること自体は否定されるべきもありませんが、前回大会の後味の悪さを繰り返したくない、私たちは一つにまとまらなければならないという思いは、すべての代議員が感じたことであったと思います。今回も書記長選出に向けて、2人の方が立候補されています。しかし、今回はそのような分断の図式ではなく、どちらの候補が選出されたとしても、この規約改正に込められた思いと原則を体現していくことによって、規約改正の趣旨が生かされる、ITUC の団結と力量発揮に邁進されるものであることを強く求めておきたいと思います。すなわち、構成組織の声に耳を傾け、そのニーズを汲み取る姿勢と実践、その際に地域組織の機能をフルに活用し、連携を強化すること、そして開発途上国の労働運動をサポートし、建設的労使関係の構築を促進することなどであります。そのためには、ILO との緊密な連携、GUF からの情報把握とフィードバックも寛容であります。それらすべてにおいて、運営の丁寧さとコミュニケーションの徹底は不可欠であります。今回の大会で真摯な議論の末に、新たな体制が確立され、満場の出席者に祝福されて船出を飾ることを心より祈念を申し上げます。その際の屋台骨に今回の規約改正が組み込まれることは、この作業に携わった一員として、またこの時期に ITUC の威厳ある運動の一端を担った人間として、無上の喜びであることを申し述べ、発言としたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Brother Kuzo, for that very powerful contribution. With that, colleagues,
I put to the House for adoption the proposed constitutional amendments. Hello, colleagues.
hello, colleagues. Thank you very much. With that contribution from Kuzo, I then put to the House for adoption the second report of this very important committee, which is the constitutional amendment for refugees. I could not see any hand. Adopted. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your report.
Just finally, I'd like to put on record my sincere appreciation to the committee for the excellent meeting that we had yesterday on this, and we certainly look forward to our future meetings as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. I think for emphasis, the email address is ITUC. Yeah, the amendment is ITUC, amendment at ITUC-CSI.org. Thank you.
At this point,
let me invite Sister Marilena, the Director of ATRAF, to kindly take the podium and invite our next speaker. Maria Elena, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, President. I would also like to acknowledge the owners of this land and the leaders past, present, and emerging, and also to tell you how big a pleasure I have in being with you today and bringing you the greetings of the ACTRAF team, no matter where they are, in Geneva, in the field, but also our colleagues in Turin. And to thank you all for the joint work that we have been doing over the last years, with a special word of thanks for Sharon Barrow, your leader over the last years and with whom I had the privilege to share the work that we have developed together all these years, and to wish you, Sharon, good luck for the future. I'm sure that we will be seeing you around. Now, friends, the world we have today is not a better world than the one we had when we were all together in Copenhagen. We had the old challenges that are still around, the digital economy, the demographic challenges, the migration, the climate change, and we've added the new ones, the COVID-19 pandemic, how to deal with that, the conflicts that we see erupting in different places of the world, but more recently, the war in Ukraine. And all this has led to more inequalities, to a health crisis, to risks of food crisis, energy crisis, inflationary pressures, and in a nutshell, more attacks on workers' rights across the world. Now, you all know, and by the work that you do every day, we know that addressing these challenges does require united, strong, innovative labor organizations and trade unions. You are the actors of change, and you need to change to shape the transformative changes of our times, and you are the champions of social justice, peace, and democracy. Now, the motto of this Congress is for a new social contract. And the person I'm about to introduce to you also has as his motto for his candidacy to the ILO post of Director General, the fact that the world needs a new social contract. And this is the vision that he has presented to all of you and to the ILO constituents. A vision which is based on values of peace, solidarity, equitable economic growth, respect for the environment, social justice, and solidarity. In a nutshell, saying something that the trade union movement has been saying for decades. We need to put people back at the heart of the development process, and we need to improve the social dimension of our societies and our policies. Fighting inequalities, diminishing the fragmentation of work, eradicating child labor, forced labor, to promote equal opportunities and addressing the remaining gender gaps on many grounds of our societies, to make trade and investments so important for our economies, but based on the respect of workers' rights. Gilbert Ungbo is someone who believes that global challenges do require global and joint action. He believes that this has got to be done in the context of a global social justice coalition. And this is also part of the work that you will have to do, we will have to do all hand in hand in moving forward. And Gilbert also believes on something that you also believe, all of you in this room, is that the ILO is different from any other organization in the multilateral system. The ILO is richer, the ILO is more genuine, but the ILO is more representative. Because whenever it takes decisions, it does that on the basis of the power of its international labor standards and its supervisory mechanisms, on the rule of law, and first and foremost, on the strong tripartism, social dialogue, and collective bargaining with strong trade union organizations. And it's for all these reasons that you and your representatives in the workers' group of the ILO did support Gilbert Ungbo for the post of Director General of the ILO. Gilbert Ungbo has started his effective action on the 1st of October. So this is brand new. His mandate has just started, and you know, we know, that the success of Gilbert will be your success and will be our success. And let me welcome to this podium Gilbert Ungbo to address us in this Congress. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning to you all. Since I have this privilege to take the floor for the first time, let me start by acknowledging the traditional custom of the land on which we all stand here today, and pay respect from the bottom of my heart to the elders from the past, the present, and the emerging, and to all Aboriginal people here with us today. I couldn't help it, but by reflecting to the statement, the speech we heard yesterday from Senator Pat Dodson, to think of the ILO Convention 169, as Guy Ryder reminded us yesterday, and to say that it is a pity that only 24 member states have ratified it. So I really want to start by making an appeal to government to really consider ratification of Convention 169. Mr. President, dear Sharon General Secretary, colleague from the High Table, dear delegates, it is a pleasure for me to be here with you today, and my first point is to express my deep appreciation, my thanks to all of you, and from the bottom of my heart, my gratitude for the support that you have led to me during the process of the election following Guy Ryder's departure. I really would like to thank the ITUC leadership for this invitation and for much more as well, in particular for Sharon Borough for her tireless work that has done so much to advance workers' interests over her time as ITUC General Secretary, and as it has been pointed out yesterday and this morning, long before that as well, and I know that will continue in the years to come. Also, Guy Ryder, my boss, is the one who recruited me to ILO, so I really have to thank him for, I don't know what came to his mind, but today I'm very, very thankful that hopefully you didn't make a wrong decision. So thank you, Guy Ryder. Both of all, he has accomplished at the ILO, you know it. And I also want to thank him for his immense work unifying the international trade union movement in the first decade of this century. Let me also thank the Australian Council of Trade Unions for the exceptional effort in hosting us so warmly. Dear colleagues, much has changed since the last ITUC Congress in 2018. This is a time of great upheaval, a time of uncertainty. Uncertainty for the world in general and for the world of work in particular. We face contradictions on a global scale. We see an unprecedented deepening of inequalities within and between countries. We see a fragmentation of work relationships combined with the growing insecurity of millions of jobs. A risk of informalization of the formal economy. And after COVID, we know the progress accomplished in formalizing the informal economy in the past 15 years has stalled. We also are witnessing a rise in working poverty, worsening levels of child labor, forced labor, the terrible absence of any social protection floor for 4 billion citizens. We also are witnessing challenges for the youth employment. In fact, the ILO monitor on the world of work, the latest release, which is 2 weeks ago, project that global employment growth will deteriorate significantly in the final quarter 2022. It also estimates that the number of hour works globally still 1.5% below the 2019 pre-crisis level, which is equivalent of 40 million jobs. And on top of this, we have the climate change, and we just heard from Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And this threatens the lives and livelihoods of billions of workers, in particular those in developing countries with few resources to provide support. So this is a watershed moment for the world of work, and also for the international trade union movement. This is a moment for us all to come together, to come in unity, and to come in solidarity. A moment to reassert our shared value of social justice, value of freedom, value of democracy, peace, and equality. Therefore, I welcome the debate the ITUC Congress will be holding for a new social contract. We need it. I too believe that such a new social contract is vital on a global scale. We need it to counter the growing inequalities and the growing insecurity that workers are facing. Dear colleagues, when I took my position as Director General, 1st October, I placed social justice at the heart of my mandate. Marie-Helena André just reminded us. I intend to make it central to the work we are doing at ILO, so to achieve the prioritization of social justice in all national, regional, and global policy making. And to achieve this, and to galvanize political momentum, I am proposing the launch of a global coalition for social justice. And this coalition will bring together all key stakeholders. This will include not just the ILO, the trade unions and employers, but also governments, other UN agencies, multilateral institutions, civil society, development partners, and academy. The coalition will aim to achieve practical results that will be of direct benefit to the working women and men of this world. So we are proposing to establish a socially sustainable anti-crisis framework working together with the IMF and the Multilateral Development Bank. We are proposing that universal social protection must be made a reality for the half of the world population that currently have no such protection, and to support workers in the just transition to a green and digital economy. Furthermore, we need a new initiative for socially fair trade, working together with WTO, UNCTAD, and others important organizations related to trade. And these proposals are based on two realizations. One is that the global challenges faced by workers require a global response based upon greater policy coherence in macro, employment, social, and environmental policies within the multilateral system. Second, in order to achieve a human-centered recovery that leaves no one behind, we must improve protection for the most vulnerable. So, central to this work will be my commitment to international labor standards and its supervisory system. We need to identify the potential gaps in regulation that have appeared as the world of work has changed, particularly since COVID. We need to look at the platform economy, the digitalization, the global supply chains, and the transition to green jobs. Where the ILO existing standards are not sufficient, we need new instruments. We must also strive for the ratification of the full implementation of existing instruments. Dear colleagues, we must also redouble our effort toward achieving full and productive employment and decent work for all. And last year, the UN General Secretary, and I'm very glad he repeated in his message that we heard a few minutes ago, launched the Global Accelerator on Job and Social Protection for Just Transitions. And the ILO is the coordinator of this initiative. The Global Accelerator commits to extend social protection coverage to the 4 billion people currently excluded and to create up to 400 million jobs. And I want to recognize the work done by Guy Ryder in assisting the UN Secretariat in launching this initiative. Of course, it is essential that the jobs created are decent jobs, jobs that provide workers with a good wage that ensures they and their families can live in dignity. And this requires trade unions to be able to organize and to be able to bargain collectively. But we have seen so many violations of trade union rights in recent years. And this is just unacceptable. Workers' rights must be protected, in particular, freedom of association and the right to collective bargaining. We need strong and effective social dialogue and law and practice that enables trade unions to protect all workers regardless of how and where they work. In other words, it is essential that the labor movement retain its strength and voice. You are the largest membership-based organization in the world. The world counts on you to play a vital role in driving the design and implementation of policies that support equity and social justice. So we count on you to defend the right of all workers and speak up for the most vulnerable in our society. We need a united, a strong, and innovative labor movement to react to the transformative challenges of our time. We face, ladies and gentlemen, complex and interlinked challenges. And to meet them, we must stand tall. We must stand together. So I would like to assure you that the ILO, under my leadership, will work tirelessly to support you in your endeavors. So we will work with you toward this new social contract that you have come here to Melbourne to discuss. We will work with you until together we have secured universal social justice and protection for all. In closing, allow me once again to thank Sharon Burrow and her whole team for their support of the ILO throughout the years. And I'm looking forward to working hand in hand with the leadership that will be elected by your Congress next week. I wish you good luck in your crucial work this week. The working women and men of this world, we are all counting on you. Thank you so much.
This is a man that we can trust at the helm of the ILO. Gilbert Ongbo, we are delighted that the workers were able to bring their votes behind you. We know that, in fact, your commitment to social justice with the social contract at the heart of it will chart a course where workers will not be forgotten by this giant of a leader. We know that, indeed, from when he was at the ILO before, that you can trust that Gilbert will listen, that where he needs to be in difficult situations, he'll be there. He was one of the first on the ground as the Deputy Director of the ILO in our fight for labour rights in Qatar, and now you just heard the commitments. It won't be easy for you, Gilbert. There's no doubt about that. But we know that tripartite dialogue can be very difficult at times, but it is at the heart of the ILO institution that indeed is the workers' parliament, and we couldn't ask for a better leader in these troubled times. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for the brilliant commitment to the rights and the dignity of working people, to the reform of the trading system, the multilateral system, with indeed a rights base that will deliver not just the new social contract, but broader areas of social justice. We thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Gilbert. Before I invite Sister Sharon to present her address, let me remind delegates that immediately after her address, we'll open the floor for discussion on our priorities. And as been stated, we have reserved 5 seats in the front. The names will be displayed on the screen, and we expect that those that will speak first will take up the seats, and they will actually come to the podium to be able to do their intervention. 3 minutes is given for each delegate, and let's endeavor to respect the 3-minute time provision. Let me therefore, colleagues, at this time, invite our General Secretary, Sister Sharon Barron, to then deliver her address and also our priorities. Sister, you have the floor.
Thank you, delegates. Indeed, let me acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, those here today and those indeed around our great nation, and indeed Indigenous people from other lands around the world. It is extraordinary to be together again, and even more incredible to see you all in Australia and in my home city, Melbourne, the city that's the home to the Australian Council of Trade Unions, which of course is my own union movement. And that union movement's led by 2 incredible women you met yesterday, Michelle O'Neill and Sally McManus. Let me thank you again and all the Australian unions for hosting us. But equally, let me acknowledge you for your strength, courage and determination to improve the lives of working people. Can I tell you, with Sally and Michelle in the leadership, with the Australian unions on the ground campaigning, they saw off a Conservative government who had taken our nation backwards, who had not just divided the nation deliberately in terms of trying to create a sense of, opposition to each other, even of deep hatred and racism, but in fact had attacked, because they have no care or concern for working people, the very heart of social protection and indeed labour rights. This Conservative government were climate deniers in the face of life-destroying fires and floods. They were a government committed to tax breaks for the wealthy, with a tax on wages and social protection, as I said. You've heard it all before, but this is a movement I'm really proud of, because they stood and saw off a government not acting in the interests of a united Australia or indeed the world. Yeah, they deserve a big hand. And within months, this leadership has worked with the Labor government to see 6 months of paid parental leave, 10 days of paid family and domestic violence leave, support for a climate bill that gives the planet a fighting chance with the promise of a just transition, and the struggle for parliamentary ratification now of the Secure Jobs Better Pay Bill. What a great name. Which strengthens collective bargaining with multi-employer bargaining, gender pay equity, employer responsibility for preventing sexual harassment at work, and so much more. That's a promise. That's the promise we all know of strong unions where people-centred democracy prevails. So at its heart, this is an example of why we fight for democracies that put people and planet at the centre of their economies, of their social policies, and a government that indeed respects working people and their unions. But it does mean in this country and everywhere, rebuilding the social contract. And it stands in stark contrast to the rise of authoritarianism, dictatorship, fascism, all of these ugly tendencies for the grasp of power and indeed power over people that are playing out as we see the rise of the far right in too many other parts of the world. But that's why we, as trade unionists, are human rights defenders, labour rights defenders, in the largest democratic movement in the world. The ITUC family has much to be proud of, but we have much to do. It's why we are here at Congress, to renew our commitment to change the working model that's abandoned working people and their families, to lay out our determination to win a new social contract with people and planet at the heart of a sustainable and a socially just future. So let's welcome our delegates. Let's welcome the delegates from our region, my region, I should say, the Asia Pacific. Come on, stand up, all the Asia Pacific delegates. Give them a big hand. And now let's welcome those from Africa. Come on your feet. Yay! And a group that I have actually stolen my heart, I must say, in the fight for democracy in their own countries, but of course the solidarity for a sovereign state of Palestine. The Arab world, the ITUC, on your feet. And Raphael, I haven't forgotten, from Latin America. Let me acknowledge the joy and the hope we all feel now with the victory of our friend Lula. You all supported. You all supported. Indeed. But you know, I want to acknowledge this. When they tried to convict Lula of corruption, who stood up? The workers in Brazil and the workers of the world through you. You trusted people like Raphael and I and the CUT leadership to know that this man was innocent. But we had to prove it to the world. So we worked with a human rights lawyer, actually several, those in Brazil, and a very famous Australian called Geoffrey Robinson, who went through all the evidence and could find no whiff of corruption. And when I was privileged to visit Lula in jail, he wasn't sitting there languishing about the unfair treatment. He was planning to fight back. And now our brother is the president of Brazil again. What a fantastic story. And now the women, come on, we have 50% of delegates by rule. You did that. Stand up, every sister in the room. Look at them. And what a journey that was, sisters. You'll all remember the fights to get a rule that says we hold up half the sky and we're going to be represented. But here you are. and I'm so very proud of that. But there's a job I want us all to do, because let's actually ask the young leaders, the young people in our movement to stand up. These delegates are the strength of the movement. The young delegates are indeed the future, and we need to do better. We don't want to see 15% of delegates as our target from the youth ranks. We want to see them join us in equal numbers, because intergenerational strength is so critical for that socially just future. So I'm charging all of you with, let's stand with our young people, let's open the spaces for them, and let's understand that if we are an intergenerational movement that's prepared to share power, influence, and inclusion, we will be stronger for it. So thank you to all the young people here today. Kind of jealous, really. I must say, I'd like to be amongst your ranks again, but, you know, I'm also happy to pass on the cudgel to you. This is, I wanted to represent some of our amazing members from very diverse walks of life and indeed work. Ali is a taxi driver from Tanzania, and I thought he said it better than anybody could. During the pandemic, I was a frontline worker transporting people in my taxi to hospital. Imagine that. People at risk of dying from COVID, and he's taking them to the hospital. We often think of those incredible nurses, the doctors, the health workers, the social workers and communities who were incredible frontline workers. But here, a taxi driver, so essential to that cause. But he says later, some of these people died from the virus. My health and my family's health was always at risk. But with no social protection, I had to use my savings to survive, and now I'm poorer than before the pandemic. This says it all. When workers who are actually holding up our societies and our economies don't even have the dignity of social protection or the recognition of how critical their work is, then we have work to do. I refer you to the report on activities, but in summary, delegates, our world has been rocked by the convergence of crisis. Historical levels of inequality, you just saw an example. The climate emergency destroying lives and livelihoods, and our delegates are still battling it out in Sharm el-Sheikh, even as we're here at COP26. The pandemic we are still living with. And I thank you for wearing your mask, because it is protecting yourselves and each other. The increasing number of countries in crisis, not the shrinking number, the increasing number of countries in crisis, our flagship program, shrinking democratic space, and the declining trust in democracy as a result of people being excluded. And when you have workers like Ali with no social protection, it's just a scandal. And that signifies the work we have to do. And after 10 years of the ITUC Global Rights Index, something we can be very proud of, even governments are still starting to recognise it, we see an escalating picture of exploitation, and nothing stands out more than indeed the increasing violence once again against trade unions. We need to make sure that the respect for trade unions is always at the centre of our societies. We are witnessing the escalation of conflict with some 58 sites of armed aggression around the world, our men and women, our family are in the middle of those conflicts. And now the abhorrent Russian invasion of Ukraine, and our hearts go out in solidarity to the Ukrainian delegates. But it's actually not just risking again the threat of nuclear war, it's also fueling the inflationary spikes in food and energy that is defining a worldwide cost of living crisis and creating despair for too many vulnerable people. When you have a look at wages at this graph, it's actually not even stark enough, but it shows you that despite workers being at the heart of both profits and productivity, actually creating the wealth that fuels our national and global economies, the gap in terms of wages is simply becoming even greater. And as we fight to actually get minimum living wages and collective bargaining respected, then I can tell you that the reality is even worse for the 60% of the people, our families, struggling in the informal economy to make ends meet with no rights, no minimum wage, no social protection. We have a broken labour market. It's why Gilbert's commitment and the ILO is so important. But this broken labour market is seeing such insecurity in the formal and the informal sectors of our economy. And what it says is when governments fail to regulate and fail to ensure fair distribution of wealth, then what do we get? We get 500 new billionaires being created in 2021 in the middle of a pandemic. And indeed an increase in their combined wealth that's equal to just 1 year or twice the GDP of countries like Indonesia, in just 1 year. And I reference Indonesia because that's where the G20 has just wrapped up. And yet the ambition is still a set of words. It's not about the kind of multilateral reform we need. And the wealthy with control of all that corporate wealth, and despite the massive increase in profits and productivity, still fight industrial laws in this country, in every country. They still fight against minimum wages on which people can live with dignity, despite the fact that that would contribute to an economy that was more robust. They definitely fight against the shared prosperity that we want through collective bargaining. So our fight continues to defend the right to share the wealth of nations. And when you consider labour income share of the massive GDP growth, if you look at it in US terms, workers donated 1.7 trillion to capital in just 2019. I don't have later figures, but $1.7 trillion to capital in 1 year. That's the gap. Now you do the sums. If you have around that figure every year as a cumulative base, then that's an enormous theft of workers' money, of their families' money. That's wage theft at its height. Well, we have a message for the corporate world. We want it back. And we want it back in jobs, wages, and social protection, and those vital public services of health, education, childcare, aged care, community care, the fabric of our society. We want that wealth distributed for people, and that's the demand for the new social contract. I wanted to introduce you to Gina because a social contract must also include the elimination of gender-based violence. Gina's from Indonesia, and she can tell us what it's like to work in a place dominated by men. I get insulted for what I wear. I get catcalled and verbally sexually abused. I've even seen my colleagues physically harassed in public. But when we complain, we are told that we are exaggerating the situation. Is the only way to stop this to abandon my passion and leave the industry? The answer is no. The only way that women will be respected is to actually stand and fight for the laws, the dignity, the sanctions that will stop the violence against women. And of course, that's why ratifying C-190 is so important. But we've also laid the foundations for new economic thinking. And if you look at this, that extensive support for social protection that underscores the way in which our economy should have a resilient base. Here it is: support affordable childcare, support democratic retirement income, support paid maternity leave, affordable access to education, and unemployment benefits. When people see polls like that, the polls just tell you if you're in the 80s, in the 80%, the late 80s, that's a universal truism. That's what our people want, a foundation and a resilience that actually will look after people and their families. And we've laid the foundations, as I said, for that new economic thinking with a decade of new standards and recommendations necessary to protect workers, to establish a labour protection floor and a global social dialogue to see 400 million jobs created, to implement universal social protection, and we've demanded a global social protection fund to help the poorest of communities. But just transition, to actually design just transitions for climate and for technology with workers at the table, their voices at the table. So we thank the UN Secretary-General and indeed Gilbert Ongbo, because the ILO will be in the lead of this global accelerator, and we need to deliver. But with the strength of our affiliates, the ITUC has achieved the following new standards and recommendations: a Convention on Domestic Workers, C-189, a Recommendation on Social Protection Floors, Recommendation 202, a Recommendation for Formalising Informal Work, Recommendation 204, a Protocol to the Forced Labour Convention to update and include fundamental rights and standards. That's how we're ending modern slavery. That's the foundations of the fight in the Gulf states and so many other places. The guidelines for a just transition towards environmentally sustainable economy and societies for all, because our economy is not just made up of traditional enterprises. We also have a long history with indeed building cooperatives, about looking for social enterprise. And that's certainly true of those brave men and women in the informal economy, but not just there. Italy probably has the most cooperatives in the world, and they have a legal framework and a justice environment. Labour rights in Qatar, and today we welcome, I'm really proud of this, we welcome 2 elected officials from workplace representation. These workers elected themselves, and indeed it's the beginning of the journey to freedom of association in a state that just 10 years ago was a state of modern slavery. Ahmed and Prince, I want you to stand up. I want to give you the biggest round of applause. It's my dream that one day these workers from Qatar, and indeed, where's our Saudi brothers and sisters, an independent Saudi committee by law now, where are you, Nasser and co? They're here somewhere. It's my dream that they will be in independent unions that will join our family. Thank you all for coming. We actually negotiated Convention C-190 to eliminate gender-based violence in the workplace, and the ILO Centenary Declaration, the brainchild of Guy Ryder, on the future of work, which, if it was implemented, would go a long way to the renewal of the social contract. It has a commitment to a labour protection floor, rights, including occupational health and safety. It has indeed a commitment to a minimum living wage, control over working time, the foundations of social protection, a transformative agenda for women, and just transitions for workers in areas of climate transition and technology. Just imagine, that's in that Millennium Declaration, and it is at the heart of what we want to see to rebuild just economies. And indeed, and as I said, occupational health and safety, which we put back on the table as a fundamental right there, has now been delivered just this year as a fundamental right. So you have indeed really achieved a victory. Give yourselves a big hand for Occ Health and Safety, now part of the fundamental rights, the labour rights that we depend on. And with that UN Global Accelerator on Jobs and Social Protection for Just Transitions and the new social contract being at the heart of the UN Common Agenda Summit in 2025, plus the UN-sponsored Global Alliance on Care, delegates, we put the care economy on the agenda. And now you have an alliance of 14 governments, not enough yet, but 14 governments committed to investing in those foundation public services. And so when you see all that, we are in a leading role to see SDG Goal 8 plus Goals 1, 10, 3, 4 and 5, full employment and decent work, health, education, gender equality, social protection, strengthened as the foundations of a more equal world, the foundations of social justice. That's our challenge as we go through the years to 2030. Because after the Rio summit, we work to see our ambitions for full employment and decent work embodied in Goal 8 of the SDGs, and of course with those other areas of equality and public services and social protection in the other goals. And the foundations of a just transition embedded in the Paris Climate Agreement in the same year when leaders made a promise of the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement. That's been accepted by all parties as a commitment to leave no one behind. There are people in Sharm el-Sheikh right now trying to undo the strength of that commitment to just transition, but we won't allow that. It has a legal base, and we have a collective strength to fight for workers and their unions at the table as we design our future. I will tell you we are determined to add an ILO Convention on Supply Chains, plus a UN treaty mandating due diligence, grievance and remedy to hold those multinationals to account. We are determined that be based on the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. We want to see the targeted update of the OECD M&E guidelines with a strong recommendation on the role of governments in promoting business responsible conduct. Imagine if we could get a convention at the OECD. That would be worth a struggle. We are standard on protection of workers in platform business, and you'll be talking a lot about that in the tech session this week, and stronger protection for the social and solidarity economy. We have a big agenda, and I know that you will fight to see it realised. But indeed, we need to ensure that demands of the new social contract are heard in every nation, And it has to be on the basis of a sustainable future. If you look at this poll, then action on climate change is at the highest we've ever polled. 66% of people are worried about climate change, and 76% believe workers have a right to know how employers are climate-proofing their jobs. That's our campaign, Kapow, Climate and Employment Proof Our Workplaces. So we do need to ensure that if we're to change the model of economy to realise a zero-carbon future, then we involve all our members in their workplaces to deliver that. There's a photo outside of, here he is, a reindeer herder. He's a union member in Sweden. And indeed, he says it in his own words. He says he wants a future where our world and home is secured, where you have a roof of fresh clouds, the floor of fresh mountain heath, and that our rivers and our streams flow freely. That's a legacy we want to leave for future generations. So even as we fight for sustainable and secure jobs, we have to fight for the nature that actually sustains us all. And again, let me return to Lula. One of the things, apart from all of the socially just policies he has, one of the things that made me teary watching that election victory was his commitment to the Amazon. His commitment to stop the destruction of the Amazon, which provides 1 in 6 molecules of oxygen for all of us. We all own the outcomes of indeed protecting the Amazon and the indigenous people who actually are the custodians. So we want national plans on jobs, secure, clean jobs. We want to build economies that are based on shared prosperity with the guarantee of secure work. And that means, all of this means, what's in your papers, in the statement. We want a new social contract with 6 clear demands. Let's remind ourselves what they are. Jobs, jobs and jobs. Climate-friendly jobs with just transition. Fundamental labour rights. Decent work with mandated due diligence regarding human and labour rights and environmental standards to hold corporations to account. Universal social protection with minimum income and vital public services of health and education as a foundation for resilience. We want just wages with evidence-based minimum living wages and strong collective bargaining systems. We want equality of gender and equality of race. And we want the promise of inclusion, the promise of a world not divided by race or ethnicity or any other prejudice. We actually want the SDGs, the Paris Climate Agreement, and we want a new global architecture for peace. Just imagine, the world comes together around climate every year. Now, it might not be every year, but why does the world never come together? The leaders, the unions, civil society, why do we never come together about preventing war, about the peace dividends that actually can deliver our security, our common security? The Congress statement lays this out clearly within the framework of our response to 3 major global trends we've identified: the climate emergency, the global health shock, and underinvestment, and the massive scope of technological change with the brutal consolidation for power. This is the 10th anniversary of Equal Times, our newspaper that delivers on all of the stories around these issues. Give Equal Times a happy birthday clap. Because they've reported on these trends over the decade. Thank you, Equal Times. Before I move the proposition, let me also thank our team with the leadership of our President Ayuba Wabba. I must say I've been privileged to work with 3 presidents. Michael Sommer, magnificent man, German leader. João Felicio, unfortunately amongst those list of our brothers and sisters who've passed away. And I got a beautiful memory from his wife Lee yesterday, where she said, thank you to all of you for the condolences, for the happy times Joel reminded her of from the ITUC family, and indeed from the songs that you've contributed to her knowledge, because Joel used to take them home, and how they kept her absolutely warm during the loneliness of the COVID years. So Vail, Joel Felicio, Vail. And now our brilliant President, Ayuba Wabba. This man, as I said to you yesterday, is a giant of a leader. And of course, the Gulf leaders and their teams for the massive effort to build our voice. I think we have Christy Hoffman, Steve Cotton, David Edwards, I think Ambit Uson is somewhere in the audience, and I know Atlee's on his way if he's not here. But these partners in our industrial strength, are incredible, and I thank them for their friendship and support. And of course, between us all, the massive effort from all of you to build our voice, to unify our demands, to organise workers under the most horrific conditions, and to see us here to renew our commitment to a new social contract. Let me also thank you for the privilege, the unbelievable privilege of a lifetime working for you as our General Secretary. It's been a shared journey, and we can proudly demonstrate the incredible strength of our movement. Can I also remind you, you know I'm a tough taskmaker, but outside there are those challenge walls. And even as we congratulate ourselves, even despite the difficulties on our achievement, renew your commitment to wage justice. Put your wage targets for minimum living wages out there. And indeed, your organising targets. Because you know what I'm going to tell you, if we don't organise, we're dead. And so put your organising targets on how much you want to grow despite the difficulties. But let's above all reaffirm our commitment to build workers' power, to change the rules of a rotten environment where workers are not sharing prosperity, where their families are not sharing prosperity. And to do that, you know what the central challenge is to build workers' power. It's to organise, organise, organise. Let's do it again, come on, 3 times. It's to organise, organise, and organise, yes. And I'm going to leave you with a woman's voice, Bilan says it all. She says, that's right, you can hear her sisters. It is only when we are united in our advocacy for the human rights of every worker, no matter their race, gender, or ability, that we are truly building a transformative union movement that fights for the liberation, the freedom for all of us. A fantastic Canadian sister. Thank you, Bilan. I submit the report, delegates, and move the Congress statement.
Thank you very much, General Secretary. Thank you very much, Sister Sharon. We really appreciate you. And thank you for that very wonderful report and also report of our activities. Colleagues, we'll then move to open the floor for debate on the Congress statement. Already the list of speakers will be displayed on the screen, and is 3 minutes each for each speaker, please. Let us try to respect the time, and we'll start with Paddy Coleman from ITF. There is a seat reserved in the front. The first 5 speakers should please move to the front, and after him, we'll then get them to come one after the other. Paddy, you have the floor, please. 3 minutes.
Thanks, mate. I want to recognise the Wurundjeri mob, the Kulin Nation. What we saw yesterday was a manifestation of courage and determination from a culture, well, more than one culture, First Nations with all of their language and their diversity. And really they laid a roadmap out for what Australia should be, and by extension, what the world should be. Also, I want to acknowledge Sharon. We've been in a long journey together, the whole of our trade union lives, I suppose, and to see the manifestation again yesterday of diversity. You can have the rhetorical commitment. You can develop the intellectual parameters. You can form the institutions, but that doesn't necessarily translate in a manifestation of the goals and actual change. And in Sharon's leadership in the trade union movement, not only here in Australia but internationally, The manifestation of her work is palpable. We recognised it before, diversity, that the demographic is being recognised in our political and industrial action and in our governance. They're against the bureaucracy, against the misogyny, against sometimes the inherent racism. We've become more diverse. I want to also recognise, and that's the greatest achievement, and that's all she ever said when I see Felix and all my old mates up here and Liz. You know, that's all we did. We've been mobilised. They say, is it Sharon Burrow or is it Sharon Burrows? I said, well, it looks like there's more of her because she's everywhere, but it's really Sharon Burrow. So that is what we've been able to achieve. And of course, now in the handing over the mantle, that sort of mentoring and that sort of modelling needs to be carried on. I've only got 3 minutes, so I want to also recognise you, Guy. The Maritime Labour Convention, not only the Indigenous Convention, was the first time that supply workers in the shipping industry had dignity and decency registered in countries like Panama and Liberia, so there wasn't a genuine link. Now, under scrutiny in Europe with just due diligence, and what we went out there and had enforceable labour rights. In every place that ship went, those workers were protected for the first time in their history with dignity and decency, and the ILO delivered that, and you, Guy, were part of the manifestation and the delivery, because that's exactly what we have to do in every convention and recommendation at the ILO. I want to just briefly, in the last 11 seconds left to me, talk about the environmental and social and governance. Sharon's delivered environment. Just transition was just not even a word when she came in. She has been one of the architects together with the ITUC to deliver that. In governance, there's now accountability on professionalism and objectivity, and that we've delivered that. The last hurdle for us is in social. We need to get the workers' capital, the trillions of dollars, through the Workers' Capital Committee that Liz and I met Toob from the FNV.
Thank you, Paddy. Thank you, Paddy.
So let's deliver the ability of our deferred wages for the dignity in retirement, also to reclaim our infrastructure, our communities, and the future. Thanks very much. Sorry for going over.
Thank you, Paddy. Thank you. Maria Helena, CSC Belgium, should please take the floor. And Adna should be on standby. You have the floor, please.
Merci, chers collègues. Un peu de diversité dans les langues d'abord. Ce congrès est consacré à un nouveau contrat social et le texte du congrès est clair. Nous en partageons clairement l'ambition. Mais un congrès, c'est aussi l'occasion, un moment important pour partager ensemble des situations qui nous heurtent au plus profond de nous-mêmes. Nous devons donc dire haut et fort que la situation en Iran, où l'on codifie la manière dont une femme peut ou non porter son voile, où près de 15 000 femmes sont à ce jour menacées de la peine de mort pour avoir voulu être libres, est inacceptable. Nous devons dire haut et fort que continuer à laisser mourir en Méditerranée des personnes exilées qui cherchent refuge est inacceptable. Nous devons dire, et pas seulement au travers de motions de solidarité, qu'envahir un pays comme l'Ukraine et y mener la guerre est non seulement une violation flagrante du droit international, mais aussi de l'autodétermination des peuples. C'est vrai pour l'Ukraine et c'est vrai pour bien d'autres pays aujourd'hui. Nous attendons donc de la CSI une stratégie de soutien à nos collègues qui sont sans défense et dont la dignité et la vie sont aujourd'hui menacées. Le chapitre des droits du contexte du Congrès qui nous est proposé confirme que pour la CSI, la défense et la promotion des droits des travailleurs doit être la première priorité, avec comme élément clé la reconnaissance des normes fondamentales du travail. Nous devons donc adopter une stratégie volontariste de défense et de renforcement des droits des travailleuses et des travailleurs, tant vis-à-vis de pays que d'institutions internationales ou d'entreprises multinationales. En d'autres termes, nous devons prioritairement continuer d'élargir le noyau dur des normes fondamentales du travail. La CSI doit donc investir plus que jamais dans l'Organisation internationale du travail, avec le comité d'experts, la commission des normes et le comité des libertés syndicales. Et tout cela pour acquérir de nouveaux droits, mais aussi pour préserver ceux déjà acquis et constamment menacés. Nous devons donc aussi renforcer le rôle de l'OIT vis-à-vis des autres institutions multilatérales pour élargir leur vision du travail décent qui est aujourd'hui extrêmement limitée. Toutes ces conventions sont des instruments forts qui nous aident dans chacun de nos pays. Dans mon propre pays, par exemple, une loi relative à l'évolution des salaires ou du droit à des négociations salariales libres nous empêche aujourd'hui, comme syndicalistes, de faire notre travail. Suite à une plainte que nous avons déposée avec l'ensemble des syndicats belges, le comité de la liberté syndicale de l'OIT vient de déclarer cette loi contraire aux conventions internationales sur la liberté de négociation collective. Je peux vous dire que c'est pour nous un point d'appui extrêmement important. Concrètement, cela signifie que les normes internationales constituent pour nous, syndicalistes, un point particulièrement important. Je termine simplement en disant qu'ensemble, autour d'une stratégie claire et partagée, la victoire de chacun et chacune d'entre nous renforce considérablement la détermination et la perspective de victoire pour tous les autres. Merci à chacune et à chacun.
Thank you, Maria Helena. I now invite Ednan Abdullah Harim Rash to take the floor from Iraq.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. السيدات والسادة أعضاء المؤتمر الخامس للاتحاد الدولي للنقابات، سعدتم مساء. يسرنا باسم الاتحاد العام لنقابات عمال العراق GFITU وعمال بلادنا وحركتهم النقابية أن نتقدم لكم بأطيب التحيات والتمنيات الطيبة إلى مؤتمركم الخامس الذي نتمنى له كل نجاح وتوفيق وتحقيق الأهداف التي يعقد من أجلها. إن عمال العراق كما هم عمال العالم يعانون من ظروف غاية في الصعوبة والتعقيد في مختلف المجالات السياسية والاجتماعية والاقتصادية، وتعاني حركتهم النقابية من صعوبات في نيل حقوقها وفي إقامة تنظيماتها النقابية الديمقراطية الحرة المستقلة، ويأملون من مؤتمركم الدعم والتضامن من أجل نضالهم في الدفاع عن حقوقهم ومصالحهم المشروعة الطبقية والوطنية. بنفس الوقت هم يناضلون من أجل حياة حرة كريمة ضد السياسات الاقتصادية والاجتماعية التي تنتهجها الحكومات وضد هيمنة ووصفات المؤسسات المالية الدولية على سياسات الحماية الاجتماعية لعمال بلادنا والمطالبة بضمان اجتماعي حقيقي وفق المعايير الدولية وحقوق الإنسان. إننا في الاتحاد العام لنقابات عمال العراق نناضل مع نساء بلادنا من أجل المصادقة على الاتفاقية رقم 190 لمنظمة العمل الدولية وتطبيقها لمواجهة كل أشكال العنف والاستغلال والتحرش وعدم المساواة في فرص العمل والأجور، وبعقد اجتماعي جديد يحقق العدالة الاجتماعية. إن عدم التزام حكومة بلدنا بالمعايير الدولية بالحقوق والحريات النقابية وعدم تطبيق الاتفاقيتين 87 و 98 رغم المصادقة عليها شكل ويشكل خرقاً فاضحاً للمعايير الدولية، مما اضطرنا إلى تقديم الشكاوي إلى لجنة المعايير الدولية واتخاذ مؤتمر العمل الدولي الأخير لعام 2022 على اتخاذ قرار بوضع العراق على اللائحة القصيرة. ومن هنا لا بد من تقديم الشكر والتقدير للرفاق الأعزاء في الاتحاد العربي للنقابات والاتحادات العربية الشقيقة وللاتحاد الدولي للنقابات والاتحادات الدولية الصديقة على تضامنهم وموقفهم الداعم والإسناد الذي قدموه لنا أثناء مؤتمر العمل من أجل أن ينال عمال بلادنا حقوقهم والدفاع عن مصالحهم، ويأملون من مؤتمركم هذا تجديد موقف الدعم والإسناد والتضامن معهم. مرة أخرى نجدد لكم تمنياتنا لمؤتمركم كل نجاح وتوفيق. عاش التضامن العمالي العالمي، وشكرا لحسن استماعكم.
Thank you, Edna. We now have Elusa de Cassia Bufeli from Brazil. And Francis Atuli should be ready.
Bom dia, é com muito orgulho que falo aqui. Queria fazer uma saudação especial a todas as mulheres presentes nesse evento. Eu, como vice-presidente da UGT Brasil, queria dizer que nós podemos e temos condições de ser sujeito e protagonista da nossa história. Quero agradecer imensamente o apoio da CSI, na pessoa da Sharon, nos nossos anos mais difíceis no Brasil. Nós não enfrentamos somente uma direita, nós enfrentamos uma direita fascista, preconceituosa, machista, que matava todos os dias. Nós não enfrentamos somente um vírus, nós enfrentamos uma violência declarada, e foi uns anos muito difíceis para o Brasil e para as mulheres, para a nossa juventude negra, para a questão da LGBTfobia, para os povos originários. Todos nós enfrentamos um momento de muita turbulência, e esse apoio e essa solidariedade internacional ajudou que a gente permanecesse e estivéssemos aqui para dizer que a nossa unidade trouxe o Lula de volta à presidência da República, apesar de todas as contradições que existiram e de todas as dificuldades que nós tivemos que enfrentar. Dizer que é muito importante para nós, brasileiros e brasileiras, esse novo momento, esse novo contrato social, todos os trabalhadores e todas as trabalhadoras incluídas, independente de onde exerça a sua função, de onde trabalhe, dizer que nós somos parte única e é a única oportunidade que nós temos de vencer. É através da igualdade, da solidariedade, da participação conjunta, e dizer que esse é o caminho que nós queremos. Só assim nós vamos, de fato, encontrar não só a justiça social, mas principalmente a equidade. Muito obrigada.
Obrigada. Now we will hear from Brother Francis Atoli from Kotu, Kenya. Brother Atoli, welcome.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, let me take these 3 minutes to congratulate the leadership of the International Trade Union Confederation and recognizing the role that has been played, particularly by the Secretariat of the International Labour Organization, led by no other person other than Sister Sharon. Sister Sharon has done a commendable job. As she prepares to exit, we also expect the incoming leadership to emulate her and to be vibrant or to exhibit firebrand leadership, such as the one that has been exhibited by Sister Sharon. It has not been very easy for the affiliates of the International Trade Union Confederation in the global changing economic pattern, particularly where a lot of work has been casualized, outsourcing, poor contracts, and casualization being the order of the day globally, without permanent jobs and so on, where it has become very difficult for us to renew collective bargaining agreements. Most of our CBAs have been rendered to a nullity because of poor global economic performance and poor terms and conditions of employment being accepted by employers everywhere in the world. We expect the new leadership to be more militant, to redress our agitation system, to assist the affiliates to be visible in every country that workers are being exploited, And I want to take this opportunity to thank the Director General of the International Labour Organization, who has just spoken as if he hails from the trade union movement. And we assure him of our support, and we expect the International Labour Organization, together with our ITUC, to move closer to working men and women across the world to make sure that better terms and conditions of service is the order in every area of our place as we attract, as we enter into the digital or e-commerce, where most of the employers and multinationals, they don't require people. And we need also to change our approach in those particular areas. I bring with me a lot of solidarity greetings from Kenya, and I want also to take this special opportunity to thank ITUC's efforts that ITUC made in making sure that trade union movement, and it continues, and we urge ITUC to continue fighting for the Sudanese workers on the continent of Africa to make sure that trade union movement is restored in that particular country. Also, ITUC, we depend on the ITUC leadership, because most of our governments on the continent are very oppressive, coming up with poor laws to negate the principles of the international trade unionism, to fight labor leaders on the continent. We want to see the ITUC and the new leadership that we expect to put in place being more vibrant, militant, and closer to workers' leadership in every area of our work. I want to take this opportunity to thank you once again, to thank the leadership of the International Trade Union Confederation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Yasmin Fahimi from the DGB Germany, welcome.
Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, liebe Brüder und Schwestern, wir sind hier aus aller Welt zusammengekommen, Gewerkschaften, die, seien wir so ehrlich, unter sehr unterschiedlichen Rahmenbedingungen arbeiten und kämpfen müssen. Wenn ich an diejenigen denke, voller Respekt, die die Ketten der menschenunwürdigsten Unterdrückung erst sprengen mussten, wie unsere Freundinnen und Freunde aus Südafrika, oder aber auch diejenigen, die es noch tun müssen, wenn wir an unsere Kolleginnen und Kollegen in Weißrussland oder Myanmar denken. Die Kolleginnen und Kollegen, die Brüder und Schwestern, die im Krieg um ihre Rechte kämpfen müssen. Die Kolleginnen und Kollegen verlieren im Krieg, wie es in vielen Ländern der Welt passiert ist, wenn ich an unsere Kolleginnen und Kollegen in Kolumbien denke, in der Vergangenheit oder jetzt aktuell in der Ukraine. Aber uns eint eben ein gemeinsamer Geist, der das Recht auf Selbstbestimmung aller Menschen in Anspruch nimmt, und zwar in allen Belangen des Lebens, die klar sagen, wir nehmen unser Recht wahr, nicht nur vor der eigenen Haustür, sondern eben auch bei der Arbeit. Dieses Recht ist ohne Mitwirkungsrechte bei der Arbeit nicht denkbar. Arbeit darf kein menschenrechtsfreier Raum sein, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Das ist das, was uns eint. Und unter den Bedingungen, die wir heute in der Welt erleben, die Herausforderungen, die wir sehen, sagen wir den Regierungen dieser Nation, ihr müsst euch jetzt entscheiden, jetzt in diesem Jahrzehnt, welchen Vertrag die Menschheit mit sich selber machen will. Es geht nicht alleine um wirtschaftliche Verträge, es geht nicht alleine um Klimaverträge. Es geht am Ende um die Frage, welchen Vertrag die Menschheit mit sich selber machen will. Und wir wissen seit 150 Jahren, dass das nur auf der Basis geht von sozialer Gerechtigkeit. Eine nachhaltige Wirtschaft wird nicht möglich sein ohne neuen Sozialvertrag. Und deswegen haben wir, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, auch eine Chance. Denn jetzt sehen wir, so traurig wie es ist, dass die Verletzlichkeit und die Abhängigkeiten in den Lieferketten etwas ist, was eben auch die ökonomischen Verletzlichkeiten unserer einzelnen Nationen deutlich macht. Ja, es ist traurig, dass die Einsicht der Menschen nicht von alleine kommt, aber wir müssen es nutzen, dass diese Abhängigkeiten der Lieferketten etwas ist, das deutlich macht, dass wir einen regelbasierten, einen wertebasierten Multilateralismus brauchen. Und dafür stehen faire Handelsverträge mit sanktionierbaren Mechanismen und dafür stehen auch das Transparentmachen von Risiken bei unzureichender Sorgfaltspflicht in den Lieferketten. Das, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, ist die Chance, miteinander hier auch ein neues Bund der Solidarität zu schaffen. Wir können uns jetzt gegenseitig die Hand reichen, indem wir deutlich machen, wir haben es schon immer gewusst, ohne soziale Gerechtigkeit, ohne Mitwirkungsrechte der Kolleginnen und Kollegen wird eine nachhaltige und faire Wirtschaft nicht möglich sein. Eine letzte Bemerkung, weil es für diesen Kongress relevant ist. Ein neuer Sozialvertrag muss allen voran auch bedeuten Frauenrechte. Wir selber müssen an dieser Stelle als Vorbild vorangehen. Es geht nicht darum, dass wir als Frauen eine Reservearmee für die Arbeit sind, und wir sind auch keine Reservearmee beim Auffüllen von Posten, sondern wir wollen hier ein klares Zeichen setzen, dass wir an der Spitze des gewählten IGBs Frauen wirklich ermächtigen, die wir hier zahlreich in unseren Reihen haben. 50% der Welt, 50% der Gewerkschaftsbewegung, das ist das, was uns hier an diesen Tagen miteinander auch einigen sollte. Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you, Yasmin. Brother Rockley from the G2UC, Georgia.
Thank you, Kitty. Let's start now. Дорогие коллеги, я от имени время не считайте. Я от имени паневропейского профсоюзного движения приветствую делегатов и гостей 5-го Конгресса МКП. Также искренне благодарю наших австралийских коллег, которые львиную долю вложили в этом прекрасном организованном Конгрессе. Также пользуюсь представленной возможности и от имени грузинских тружеников хочу поблагодарить сестру Шарон за ее деятельность. Профсоюзная деятельность и лидерство не совсем благодарная и соответствующая оцениваемая работа. Но я здесь, в Австралии, громко хочу заверить тебя, сестра Шарон, мы, грузинские, да и не только грузинские профсоюзы, соответственно, оцениваем, благодарим и не забудем о вкладе, который ты вложила и внесла в сохранение независимости и развитие грузинских профсоюзов и всего профсоюзного движения в целом. В моей стране, в Грузии, говорят, что в своей стране человек является лицом и зеркалом своей семьи, а за границей своей страны зеркалом и представителем всего народа и своего народа и страны. Дорогие австралийские братья и сестры, я на вашем месте гордился, что Шарон очень достойно представляла свою страну и народ на протяжении этих лет. Теперь, что касается насчет манифеста. Те проблемы, которые обозначены в манифесте, конечно, полностью описывают те вызовы, перед которыми стоит человек труда и целиком наша планета. И то, что мы, профсоюзы, умеем четко обозначить и описать проблему, это не новость. И, конечно, я и любой нормальный гражданин этой планеты согласен с каждым пунктом этого нового социального договора. Единственное, насчет чего я колеблюсь, насколько достаточно те шаги и действия, о которых также говорится в проекте манифеста. Мы же об этих проблемах говорили в Копенгагене, что перечень проблем уменьшилось, наоборот, увеличилась и география этих проблем. COVID-19 еще ярче и жестче показала результаты алчной политики и суровость фашистского капитализма. Раз от Копенгагена до Мельбурна перечень вызовов не уменьшился, значит, надо предпринимать и выработать более удачные механизмы для решения проблем, для достижения нашей общей цели. Мне это видится так. Больше мы должны работать с молодыми, больше молодых мы должны привлечь в нашем движении. Шарон, когда говорила насчет женщин, ползала, и слава Богу, что мы этого достигли, ползала были женщины.
Thank you, Brother Rockley.
А когда говорили о молодых было очень мало. 20 секунд. Я хочу также, когда мы говорим, что мы должны привлечь новых членов, эти новые члены и стандарты, которые мы должны соблюдать, разве эти стандарты будут соблюдены, и новые члены, мы сможем их привлечь, когда старые члены у нас сидят в тюрьме? Мы в Копенгагене все вместе скандировали, и спасибо Шарону, спасибо Рафаэлу, спасибо бразильским братьям и сестрам, и всем братьям и сестрам, которые вместе боролись за освобождение Лулы. Но наш брат, сегодня, который должен находиться в этом зале, сидит у диктатора 21 века в тюрьме, у диктатора Лукашенко. Разве мы сможем привлечь новых членов, если мы достаточно усилий не приложим для того, чтобы освободить человека, который боролся за свободу объединения, который боролся за свободу белорусского народа, который хотел внедрить те стандарты и нормы в своей стране, о которых мы тут говорим. Раз в Копенгагене для нас целью была Лула, сейчас для нас должен являться Яришук, Александр Яришук, который сидит в тюрьме. Несмотря на то, что регламент мой закончился, я буду тут стоять до той поры, пока вот степень нашей солидарности не будет таковым, что мы все вместе встали и также скандировали «Яришук либре», как говорили в свое время «Лула либре». Пожалуйста, встаньте. Stand up, everyone. Please. Яришук либре. Яришук либре. Яришук либре. Пусть диктатор 21 века услышит, что мы своих в тюрьме не бросаем и не бросим никогда. Спасибо.
Thank you, Brother Rockley. Bienvenida, Leida Marcela León Molina, de ASI, Venezuela. Bienvenida.
Buenos días, hermanos, líderes sindicales y trabajadores del mundo. Desde la Central de Trabajadores ASI Venezuela, presento mis respetos a los guardianes de esta tierra y nuestro saludo y agradecimiento a la compañera Sharon Barrow y a todo el equipo con que trabajó. Gracias por el apoyo a la Central de Trabajadores ASI Venezuela. Es un orgullo decir que Sharon y Katy representaron dignamente a las mujeres y líderes sindicales del mundo. El contexto económico, social y laboral en Venezuela está agravado, con un gran clima de conflictividad en virtud del aumento de las desigualdades e injusticias derivados de un sistema laboral y económico fallido, con sanciones y bloqueo económico, con enormes déficits profundizados por la pandemia que nos ha dejado grandes impactos. Hoy es más urgente y necesario el diálogo social para construir juntos un nuevo contrato social que fortalezca la democracia, el Estado de Derecho, las instituciones, la igualdad, la prosperidad compartida y la resiliencia para superar los desafíos. El 67% de nuestra población activa está atrapada en la economía informal. Más de 6 millones de migrantes venezolanos en el mundo. Nuestros salarios son inexistentes y de indigencia, menos de $0,5 al día. Se socava la libertad sindical. Tenemos dirigentes sindicales detenidos, como el caso del compañero Gabriel Blanco de nuestra Central de Trabajadores. Se pulveriza la contratación colectiva y no hay acceso a la protección social, a la educación eficiente y segura. La brecha salarial y de género es mayúscula. Ha aumentado la tasa de feminicidios. En este año 2022, 175 feminicidios, 24 en el mes de septiembre. Hace falta un nuevo contrato social entre los trabajadores, el gobierno y los empresarios que incluya garantías sociales universales como un piso mínimo de protección para todos los trabajadores y las trabajadoras, que garantice el derecho, el respeto a los empleos decentes, salarios mínimos vitales y la negociación colectiva. Venezuela necesita justicia salarial. Hay que acabar con el déficit de puestos de trabajo, respeto a los derechos humanos fundamentales de los trabajadores y reemplazar la desigualdad y la discriminación por igualdad y protección social.
Sobre estos cimientos se puede construir la paz y afrontar y superar los acuciantes roles del presente y del futuro. Es por ello que en este magno congreso pedimos a los hermanos del mundo acompañamiento y fortalecimiento del proceso de diálogo sociolaboral con asistencia técnica de la OIT. Pedimos acompañamiento y fortalecimiento del diálogo político facilitado por el Reino de Noruega para el levantamiento de las sanciones al Estado venezolano que han empobrecido y precarizado a nuestro pueblo trabajador.
Compañera.
Pedimos solidaridad con nuestros hermanos migrantes en todo el mundo que hoy son víctimas de xenofobia, discriminación, trata y homicidios. Agradecemos el compromiso y rol activo del director general, de los órganos de control de la OIT, de la CCA, de la CCI, por fortalecer el diálogo tripartito con resultados en Venezuela.
Gracias,
Como lo
compañera.
dice la Constitución de la OIT, la paz universal y permanente solo puede basarse en la justicia social. Por ende, construyamos juntos un nuevo contrato social. Gracias.
Gracias. Next speaker we have from our youth. Welcome. Satyajit Reddy Gongala from ITUC, India. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Satyajit Reddy from India. So I'm a young trade union organizer from India. Today, I would like to mention, I accept with all the points mentioned in the social contract, but I like to focus on equality. In 2022, also gender discrimination and gender pay gap are realities which women face on a daily basis. Gender equality remains an aspirational state. No country in the world no country in the world can claim to have achieved it. The gender pay is a real thing. In United States, women make an average of 79 cents for every dollar a man makes. When it comes to my region, that is South Asian region, it's almost 50 cents for every dollar a man makes. This is not just a women's issue. This is a family issue, this is a society issue, it's a trade union issue, and also an economic issue. When women are paid less than the men, it hurts the economy. It hurts the economy in many ways. Sometimes stating the bad economy, women are not even paid equally. So basically, we all stuck in a vicious cycle. Society tends to undervalue the countless hours of unpaid work that women carry out every single day. In UK, on an average, women do approximately 60% more unpaid work than men. This burden of unpaid work prevents women from reaching highest paid positions in some fields. So when we talk about equality, we need to also talk about young workers. Due to high inflation rate and high unemployment rates, the young workers are forced into informal economy and gig economy. I would particularly like to talk about gig economy workers. As you all know, it's very difficult these days to organize young workers. It's more difficult to organize young workers in gig economy. So as a union organizer, we need some innovative tools to organize young workers in gig economy. So I request the ITUC leadership to pressure some big corporates to sign an agreement with them, at least ensuring minimum protection for these workers. These agreements will attract young workers towards the trade union. Actually, I'm aware of many global framework agreements done by the global unions. We need more these kind of agreements to attract young workers to the trade unions. I know that equality isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for. So let's keep fighting until everyone is truly equal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And right on time, thank you. Sister Gladys Branch from Sierra Leone, welcome. And if Jarko can get ready from Finland, you will be next. Welcome, sister.
Good morning, Chair. let me stand on the existing protocols. And let me say I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to the document. Colleagues all, Congress have made no mistake in selecting the theme for the 5th World Congress as the new social contract. When we take a look at the present situation in the world, what is going through on a daily basis, the pandemic, inequality, job loss, lack of decent job, climate change, increase in abuse, child labor, the war in Ukraine, and many more. Colleagues, the list is long. We cannot disagree to this document and the theme, and we all need to work towards the new social contract. One that will put the economy in the service of human and save lives of the people and the planet from threats and destruction. We need a social contract that will provide the fundamentals for democracy, equality, shared property, and for the people to have the resilience to acquire the skills needed to overcome the challenges they face on a daily basis. Indeed, we as workers need to live a life of rights, a life that has respect, a life that looks at the living standards, that have an improved decent work for all. And in this, no one must be left behind. Congress document clearly states the fundamental principles on which the new social contract must be established. That is jobs, rights, wages, social protection, and equality. These are challenges that need to be addressed. Colleagues all, we demand our rights. Our rights must be given to us. Our rights for freedom of expression, our right to belong, our right to assemble, but today they have been taken away from us. We have been arrested when we want to speak out. We are detained when we are gathered to assemble, to speak out, to give voice for the voiceless. We need the right to strike. We need the right to share the national wealth. Our human rights have been taken away from us. The economic crisis in the world today has eroded the gains we have made in our nation's minimum wage. And today our income cannot even sustain our lives, nor our family. The wage is small. The wage is low. We need to go back to the drawing board. We need to hand a living wage. The pandemic has clearly showed
Thank you, sister.
The pandemic has clearly showed to the world that we need to invest in social protection. Please give me just 2 minutes.
No, we can't. Gladys, we need to move on. Thank you. Just a closing line? Thank you.
Yes.
Sisters and brothers, we have a lot of people we need to get through. I know everyone has a lot to say, so we are trying to stay on time here.
Okay, then.
So, our brother from Finland, thank you so much. Welcome, Jarkko. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. First, I want to thank you, Australian sisters and brothers, for hosting us here in beautiful city of Melbourne. And I want to thank you, Sharon, as well, for all the great work you have done for the ITUC and the whole international trade union movement. And I also want to acknowledge the owners of the land and tell you that the question of indigenous people, in our case Sami people, is very current in my home country, Finland. And I must state that Finland has not ratified ILO 169, meaning that we have a lot of work ahead of us. But trade union colleagues, sisters and brothers, the Congress statement calls for a new social contract. That call is legitimate and necessary. In the last over a decade, we have gone from crisis to crisis, from the financial crisis to the global pandemic and to the illegal war started by Russia against Ukraine in Europe. That has caused enormous human suffering and material destruction in Ukraine. Russia's brutal war has also caused a global food and energy crisis, which can be seen in rising inflation, rising prices, and weakening of people's livelihoods. All three crises are united by the fact that workers have had to pay a heavy price. Businesses and capital owners have experienced growth in profits and income that ordinary workers can only dream of. Injustice and inequality undermine people's faith in society, in democracy, and to the future. We have seen the rise of populist movements in all over the world, especially right-wing populism is dangerous for our societies. They offer simple solutions to the complex social and societal problems. The right-wingers are a danger to democracy and the rule of law. They are also a danger to organized society and to the trade union movement. And they are ready to reject the principles on which prosperity, stability, and freedom in our societies have been built on. And that's shameful. And we must stop this. We need strong workplace-level work, continuous organizing, meeting and listening to the people, strong collective bargaining, and political lobbying. We must be the voice of the workers and promoter of their interest in working life and in society. It is no coincidence that in countries with a strong trade union movement and organized labor market, the well-being of people and the stability of society are also at a high level. A new social contract is created when trade union movement can truly and strongly represent workers, its members in society. We have to focus our energy on this work and be present in all arenas, from workplaces to the global institutions and organizations. The ITUC needs a strong and capable leadership, but we have to do our job at the national level. Trade union power and influence depends on membership and organizing. That's the job we need to do.
Thank you, brother.
And the best way to support the coming ETU leadership. Let's do our job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miranda from the FGDP Belgium, and then Brother Zweli, you are next.
Good morning, brothers and sisters, dear comrades. It's hard time for the people. Hard times once again we are confronted to a crisis. After the financial one in 2008, after COVID in 2020, now we have the crisis of the higher cost of living and possibly a world economic recession. And moreover, there is a climate crisis which will affect more and more people. And one could add to this challenge the digitalization process on the world of work. And of course, the surge of far-right and right populism in many countries with their increasing impact on the minds of the people. And so, will we let ourselves be crushed, I ask you? Will we let ourselves be crushed? No. We won't let ourselves be crushed. And why is this? Because we have the power. The people have the power. The trade unions have the power. And we have the power to work on common solutions, reaffirming our universal values of solidarity, peace, equality, and social justice. And it's of the utmost importance, as it is to continue the battle with an endless energy, to defend our values within each of our countries and through a continuous and concerted international effort. So this Congress, this week, must result in an even stronger trade union force than it was before, with a strong common commitment to fully respect internal democracy and transparency in the decision-making process, in the finances and in the management. A global trade union strategy for the next 4 years, together with concrete action plan including a few well-selected priorities, and priorities to be translated to the daily lives of our organizations and for our shop stewards and organizers. And I will mention two. One, the unconditional defense of workers and trade union rights must certainly be a priority. We need to reinforce our means and efforts, and of course, together with a strong commitment and solidarity to comrades who are in jail, like Alexander Yarushuk from Belarus, like Karol Inji and Lee Chuk-yan from Hong Kong, we need also to guarantee the rights for trade unions, freedoms, and rights to strike, including in countries like our own, like in Belgium, where we are confronted since a few years to an increasing number
Thank you, sister.
of gradual worsening sentences. And the defense of the workers is also the defense, unconditional defense of women's rights, like in Iran. Marie-Hélène said it already, and I would like to finish with one intervention that's from a French feminist, Simone de Beauvoir. She said, "Never forget that it takes a political, economic, and religious crisis for women's rights to be called into question. These rights can never be taken for granted. You must remain vigilant throughout all your life. And this is what it's about, workers' rights, women's rights. Together we are strong, comrades. Ensemble on est plus fort. Juntos somos más fuertes."
Thank you so much for that message. Brother Zweli, I see you coming. Zwelinzima Vavi from SAF2 South Africa, welcome.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, dear comrade Sharon Barrow and the President, Ayuba Waba. I stand here today perhaps as a celebration that the South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAF2, was affiliated by the ITUC General Council on the 17th of November. So on my own behalf and on behalf of the membership of the Federation, I want to thank the members of the General Council for allowing us to join this family of independent and democratic trade unions. The founding principles of the ITUC were shaped in my presence, and it is an honor to return to this fold to reinforce your work. SAF2 is a product of the 2014 implosion of the main trade union federation, for which I was its longest-serving general secretary. The dismissal of hundreds and thousands of workers from COSATU was precipitated by the cold-blooded and premeditated murder of 34 mine workers by the ANC government in August of 2012. Their sin was to demand a living wage and to prevent that the current president of South Africa termed them dastardly criminal, leading within 24 hours to the Marikana massacre. With deep scars on our forehead and countless knives stuck deep within our backs, SAF2 declares that this Congress, or declares to this Congress, that irrespective of this history, we consider unity of the South African workers sacrosanct, just like we regard the unity of workers in Africa and the rest of the world more important than our immediate disappointments. You all know that there is no more urgent prospect for achieving unity in South Africa than in the current situation. The brutalization of the capitalist system and the ruthless imposition of the neoliberal and austerity makes it vitally important for genuine trade unions to come together and forge a common minimum program, a common fight-back strategy against a clear common enemy, the capitalist neoliberalism and austerity. Further, we are pleased to broadly endorse the World Congress Statement. The statement on a new social contract contains many of our fundamental demands for justice, in particular for African workers and workers from the South, who are today still dealing with the legacy of colonialism and imperialism. We join you in the daily fight for jobs and decent work agenda, the rights, the wages, and to liberate workers from poverty and inequalities, the social security and inequality. And we want to urge you, lastly, to make sure that we forge unity with the workers across the globe in pursuance of a new internationalism. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for allowing us to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I now want to call on Sister Tomoko from JTUC Rango, Japan.
Thank you, Chair. 日本より連合の吉野智子でございます。まず、この大会の開催のためにさまざまな準備をしてこられた ITUC 事務局、そしてミッシェル会長をはじめ ACTU の皆様のご尽力に心から感謝を申し上げます。こうして多くの仲間がメルボルンに参集し、対面で討議を行えることに対する喜びと感謝、そして ITUC の労働運動の国際的なつながりの重要性を改めて感じています。本大会に皆様と議論を深めていくことで、さらに連帯を深めていくことができると私は確信をしています。大会宣言案について、労働組合権及び新たな社会契約を中心に賛同する立場からいくつか述べたいと思います。前回の大会以降、ロシアのウクライナ侵攻、またミャンマーや香港などにおける人権、労働組合権の蹂躙により、平和、民主主義、人権が脅かされています。国際労働運動と連帯して自由、人権が保障された平和で民主的な社会を少しでも早く実現するためにも、私たちのより強い連帯が必要です。また ITUC が ILO や他の国際機関とも共同し、ILO 第87号条約と第98号条約を踏まえた集団的労使関係に基づく建設的な労使関係を構築し、復旧させる取り組みの重要性を強調しておきたいと思います。労働基本権の擁立と確立、不当労働行為の禁止、つまり労働組合の自由は我々の行動のすべての前提です。その上で、労使のそれぞれの立場が違うことは前提として、労働条件や企業の業績、経済・産業政策などについての関心を共有すること、生産性向上や公正な配分の実現、労使間の課題や問題の解決に向けて話し合うこと、このような建設な労使の営みが私たちの実現を目指す新たな社会契約にとって最も有効であると考えます。皆さん、コロナ禍により労働分配率の世界的低迷、格差の拡大が顕著となっています。私たちはこの大変な状況を打開しなければなりません。そのために私たちは政府に政策転換を促すだけでなく、職場における効果的な交渉に向けて私たちの交渉力を高めていくことが重要です。ITUC 本部は地域の状況を一番把握している ITUC 地域組織と緊密に連携し、組織化、安定雇用、賃金引き上げ、社会的セーフティーネットの拡充などを求めるキャンペーンに取り組む加盟組織との共同行動、連帯、そして支援が不可欠です。何よりも、各国における組織率の向上、ITUC に結集する運動の統合による交渉力強化、そして政策制度改善に向けた政治的影響力の強化のために、これまで同様、私たちは全力を挙げなければならないと思います。それが新たな社会契約に向かう前提です。私もジェンダー平等の視点を運動のすべてに入れていく取り組みを進めています。すでに 結果に結びつかないものもありますが、諦めずに言い続けていくことで少しでも状況を変えていくことができると信じます。今後も ITUC 加盟組織の皆さんとともに取り組んでまいります。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much, compañero Manuel Mesías Tatamuez Moreno from Ecuador.
Buenos días, compañero presidente, compañera secretaria general, compañeros delegados a este quinto congreso, compañeras de todo el mundo. Primero, un saludo para todos los héroes del mundo y de este país que nos acogen a todos y a todas las trabajadoras del mundo aquí en este día y en este congreso, que es tan necesario ahora que vivimos en guerras y que todos los trabajadores y trabajadoras del mundo anhelamos la paz. En nombre del Ecuador, de la CEDOCUT, señor presidente, señora secretaria general, todos anhelamos la paz, pero que también la OTAN también luche por la paz, no que solo ordene la paz, sino que también luche por la paz, porque los trabajadores, las trabajadoras y el secretario general de la OIT decía ahora que necesitamos la paz, que luchemos por la paz, que necesitamos un sindicalismo renovado, un sindicalismo clasista, un sindicalismo autónomo, un sindicalismo renovado, pero un sindicalismo que tiene que ir más allá de lo que necesitamos en el mundo. Y eso es lo que necesitamos los latinoamericanos, el fortalecimiento de la CCA, el fortalecimiento de la CCI, el fortalecimiento de toda Europa. Y por eso necesitamos la paz. Cuando decimos la paz, no tiene que ser la paz solamente de decir paz para estos y guerra para estos otros. Tiene que ser la paz para todos, porque si no, decimos paz que queremos de unos y no de todos. Y nosotros los ecuatorianos queremos paz, porque las derechas en el mundo no quieren que haya sindicalismo independiente y clasista, sino que quieren que haya un sindicalismo amorfo, un sindicalismo que esté siempre a los pies de la extrema derecha, del neoliberalismo, de que lo que quieren que estemos siempre apoyando las guerras, que los que quieren es consumir armamentismo y no la paz, no el empleo, no la salud y no la educación. Y en el Ecuador lo que queremos es que lo que gastan en armamentismo, gasten en salud y en educación. Lo que gastan en armamentismo, queremos que luchen por la paz y educación y salud. Eso es lo que deseamos los ecuatorianos y es lo que debemos de desear los de la CCI, los trabajadores y trabajadoras del mundo, porque si no decimos la juventud, decimos que es la nueva generación del sindicalismo, que la nueva generación son las mujeres, cierto, pero necesitamos también, señora presidenta, señores delegados a este Congreso, que debemos todos decirle, paz habrá cuando haya igualdad, paz habrá cuando todos digamos paz para el mundo con educación, salud y todos habrá ahí sí igualdad. Gracias. Cuando la CCI se renove por una igualdad total para todos y todas. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, compañero. Albert Olin from Saco, Sweden. And then I'll ask Brother Gregory to be ready from the FPU Ukraine after this, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Congress, as the chairman of the student wing of the Swedish Confederation of Professional Associations, it is with great joy that I see how the draft statement so strongly acknowledges climate change as both a trade union responsibility as well as a job creator for a skilled and educated workforce in the future. Students in Sweden and across the globe look to our trade unions as key actors in the fight for climate action and a just transition. When politicians and industries fail to deliver, our organizations have a unique opportunity in moving the goalpost and driving through real change. In the past, some of our organizations may have declared that the global responsibilities of trade unions do not extend further than the social and economic sustainability of the Paris Agreement. However, to secure fair work on this planet in the future, climate action is key. Only through recognizing that climate action through just transition promote our joint goals of fairer and more equitable societies are we able to continue our work in the future. Only through active action to promote just transition can our organization stay relevant to a new generation of workers in all types of work. And only through necessary investments in relevant skills and accessible education are we able to secure that our members are equipped to tackle climate change and overcome the climate emergency facing our globe. Education has to be the foundation for the next generation of green jobs. Congress, our organizations are the voice of the workers as we promote climate action through just transition. Every day, our organizations strive towards better working conditions for our members. Climate action through just transition constitutes a pillar, not a hindrance, in our continued strife. Now, written words are naturally different from actual action, and there is a lot more work to be done. However, if there are any organizations that can convert words into actions, it is our organizations. We're the ones who can turn blah, blah, blah into actual lasting change, to paraphrase a famous Swedish climate activist. Therefore, as a representative for students of Sweden, the workforce of the future, the climate writings of the draft statement actually instills increased hope in me for that very future. Thank you.
Thank you, and very nice to hear so many young voices at our Congress. Thank you. Brother Gregory from FPU Ukraine, welcome.
Дорогие братья и сестры, как вы понимаете, я буду говорить прежде всего о вопросах войны и мира, то, что мой коллега недавно обозначил. И вот только в условиях мира мы можем обеспечить достойный труд для трудящихся и, главное, сохранить им жизнь. Каждое утро украинская семья просыпается и желает доброе утро и мирного неба и мирного дня. С начала войны, а она уже идет 270 дней в Украине, погибло более 7 миллионов мирных жителей. Уничтожено свыше 5 миллионов рабочих мест. Разрушены сотни городов и сел. Их жители потеряли жилье, работу, оказались в бедности. 11 миллионов моих сограждан стали беженцами внутри страны и за рубежом. Это преступление против человечности. Украинский парламент заявил о геноциде украинского народа. Война затронула многие страны и трудящихся, и никого не может оставить равнодушными. Считаю, что Конгресс в своей резолюции должен решительно осудить Федерацию независимых профсоюзов России за то, что она поддержала действия власти, развязавшей войну против Украины, и комиссия по расследованию этого случая должна быть продолжена в составе нового Генерального совета. Не могу, конечно, коллеги, не отреагировать на высказывание о скорейшем прекращении войны. Поверьте, украинцы, которые пережили ужасы Второй мировой войны, потеряли 9 миллионов в этой Второй мировой войне. Как никто хотят мира. Но мира не любой ценой. не ценой потери своих территорий, не ценой потери независимости. И, конечно же, все территории должны быть немедленно освобождены врагом-агрессором России. Украинцы вправе определять свою судьбу сами путем демократических инструментов. И никто не может навязывать нам, как действовать по-другому. Мы благодарны всем странам и народам, поддержавшим нашу справедливую борьбу против российского агрессора, и прежде всего Международное объединение профсоюзов и национальные профцентры, которые оказали и гуманитарную помощь, и моральную, и политическую. Говоря о главной теме нашего собрания, новый общественный договор, конечно же, мы требуем нового общественного договора. Это видно на примере также Украины. Ведь транснациональная компания через своих лоббистов в парламенте, в правительстве протаскивает антисоциальные, антитрудовые и антипрофсоюзные законопроекты, которые ослабляют движение профсоюзное и ставят под угрозу достижения, которые мы имели за годы независимости. Поэтому благодарим за поддержку Международной конфедерации профсоюзов, Европейской конфедерации профсоюзов. Мы вместе сделаем все необходимое для того, чтобы вступление Украины в Европейский Союз привело нашу страну к стандартам социальной Европы. И несколько слов нам предстоит избрать председателя, генерального секретаря. На следующий период наша организация будет голосовать за Лука Висентини. И, конечно же, не могу сказать добрые слова в адрес Шарон Барроу. Первые дни войны она набрала меня по телефону и сказала: Григорий, чем мы можем помочь Украине? И делала за это время все возможное для того, чтобы нас поддерживать. И, конечно, она много сделала и для становления Международной конфедерации профсоюзов, придав ей большего веса и авторитет на сегодняшний день. Поэтому вооруженные решениями, которые мы примем на этом конгрессе, мы вместе усилим борьбу. Да здравствует профсоюзная наша солидарность. Слава героичному народу України!
On behalf of all of us, Brother Gregory, thank you so much for those powerful words. Next, we have Karen Bott from the ACTU Australia. Sister Karen, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say on behalf of the Australian Union Movement, we stand in solidarity with our friends and colleagues in Ukraine. That was a powerful speech. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're meeting on today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their leaders, past, present and emerging. I also want to acknowledge the ITUC leadership, especially my friend Sharon Burrow. On behalf of the Australian Union Movement, I'd like to say thank you for everything you have done. I rise to speak in support of the draft Congress statement in respect to the importance of the public sector in the delivery of vital public services and their rights to freely organise and collectively bargain. Services that are delivered by government workers to support communities and individuals when and as they need them are a vital part of any democracy. They are not delivered for profit, but are delivered to ensure a safety net is available to all citizens, not just those few who can pay for them. Yet governments continue to privatise and outsource public sector work to for-profit multinationals, many of whom pay little or no tax. The importance of public services has come to the fore during Australia's past 3 years with a vital number of emergencies occurring. It was the public service workers who were at the forefront of emergency response, emergency recovery and rebuilding shattered communities, in the main following the extreme bushfires of 2019-2020, followed by the COVID pandemic, and now we have 2 states in dramatic floods. The importance of public sector is evident during COVID. It was public servants who took over hotel quarantine after initially outsourced contracts failed spectacularly, seeing COVID outbreaks across our community. It was public servants who designed and rolled out COVID assistance programs when businesses were closed. It was the public sector that worked with the trade union movement to develop financial assistance for workers in insecure work who were laid off as a result of the closures. People in arts institutions, aviation, tourism, performing arts, hospitality workers. The public sector was at the forefront of health and aged care as thousands were infected and many died. Teaching and support services, staff moved mountains to get education online so children would not be affected by school closures. It was public servants who were contact tracing, working through long hours trying to ensure we kept our communities safe. But it's not just in emergencies that we rely on quality public services, it's our everyday lives. It's the public service who run our democracies through our roles in various parliaments. It's the public sectors that deliver and maintain law and order, protect our environments, our children, offer services and solace to victims of family violence, and keep our drinking water fresh and clean. Too often commentators fail to see the difference between governments and the people who work for them.
Thank you, Sister.
I would just like to add, it's important that we use this Congress and the statement to advocate for the ratification of ILO Convention 151 to allow public sector workers the right to collectively bargain and collectively organise across this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Brother Modi from CNTS Senegal, welcome.
Bonjour tout le monde. Un nouveau contrat social, quoi de plus pertinent quand on vit les manifestations de la mondialisation, les changements dans le monde du travail marqués par les grandes mutations, les innovations technologiques, le changement climatique, la COVID-19, les phénomènes migratoires et le poids de la dette devenue insoutenable pour les pays africains. Et encore la crise de la guerre en Ukraine qui vient aggraver la situation, affectant sérieusement les politiques de souveraineté en hydrocarbures et alimentaires, entraînant un renchérissement du coût de la vie, des pertes massives d'emplois en Afrique, et une remise en cause du droit du travail alors qu'un coût social élevé a été payé pour la relance économique. Les inégalités sont croissantes. Pour ces raisons donc, nous soutenons le projet de déclaration. Et je voudrais insister sur quelques aspects, notamment le changement climatique, qui est une réalité poignante aujourd'hui. Près de 10 millions d'Africains pourraient basculer dans la pauvreté d'ici 2050. Et les pertes annuelles de productivité du fait des changements climatiques, selon les experts, pourraient atteindre 2 à 12%. C'est pourquoi nous soutenons entièrement la déclaration à propos de la réclamation d'une transition climatique juste, négociée avec la participation des syndicats. Ensuite, nous sommes pour un contrat social axé sur le droit et la justice sociale. Le droit à l'emploi, car l'Afrique au sud du Sahara enregistre le déficit le plus important en matière de travail décent, d'emploi précaire, et c'est en Afrique que nous vivons les tentatives de remise en cause des droits avec l'adoption de codes favorables, dit-on, à l'investissement plus attractif, avec comme conséquence la précarisation du travail, le développement du secteur informel et l'absence de protection sociale pour tous. Spécifiquement, le monde du travail en Afrique a subi des pertes, des atteintes ces dernières années, entraînant du coup la suppression des libertés, l'adoption de politiques d'austérité qui ont souvent suspendu les avantages acquis sur les salaires, ruiné les prestations sociales dans les entreprises publiques et les licenciements abusifs dans le secteur privé, sur le compte des difficultés économiques et la faiblesse d'encadrement par les lois sociales. C'est pourquoi il nous faut encore soutenir la quête de l'établissement de nouvelles normes internationales du travail et encourageons un dialogue social, la négociation collective, le respect des droits syndicaux, des emplois décents qui fondent effectivement la base d'un contrat social axé sur les droits et les emplois décents. Une protection sociale minimale pour tous, un salaire minimum pour tous, un dialogue social de qualité
Merci.
et pour la formalisation de l'économie informelle,
Brother
l'équité et la justice sociale. Par ailleurs, il nous faut replacer l'unité syndicale au cœur du nouveau contrat social. En effet, dans ce contexte, avec les multiples défis à relever, la division des travailleurs
Brother
peut
Modi.
compromettre sérieusement les chances de contribuer activement à la construction d'un monde plus juste qui passe par un contrat de solidarité. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Thank you so much. Isabel Sophie Victoria Gego, welcome from the DGB Germany.
Honorable colleagues, fellow comrades, dear brothers and sisters. As a member of the ITUC Youth Committee, I'm speaking here representing as a young trade unionist the future generations of our beloved trade union movement. And I shortly want to draw your attention to the draft statement, and I'm actually a little bit shocked. I'm shocked that the word young only appears 9 times and youth 3 times, and youth is again not a priority. I think a whole chapter would have been needed because we talk about nothing less than our future. Decent work begins with education, training, and apprenticeships, and is the basis to even enter the labor market. Further, trade union youth structures are so much needed. I think the message is pretty clear. The future of the trade unions depends on the capacity and the willingness to attract young people to the trade union movement and stop again the decline of membership numbers. So trade unions, they must be attractive for young people through modern language, accessible structures, and also involve them in decision-making processes and let them share and include their perspectives. So for the next ITUC Youth Committee, I really anticipate from the ITUC more resources and even a bigger emphasis on youth. One meeting a year is definitely not enough, and we need to be prepared for the future with a strong youth structure. A youth conference, for example, like the Women Conference, with a good strategic plan, an agenda, permanent discussion, working on different topics, and sharing best practice examples, not only via text message on WhatsApp in a short version, but really helping each other with advice, being connected with our friends and colleagues around the world to combat global capital, be relevant in governmental decision-making processes, and finally nothing less than to save our planet and give the workers a strong voice in the world. I want to really put a huge emphasis in this speech on the climate crisis as a main driver of concern for especially the young workers, because the points of no return, colleagues, please let me repeat it, the points of no return, they are coming nearer and nearer with a strong finality. And when this planet will be aflamed and is mostly inhabitable, we won't have a world in which we can fight for better working conditions and a good life for the workers. So the climate crisis, it's not a random externality. This planet will live on is the pure basis, I would say, for our living and working. And what is further needed is to really take a look at not only the ecological, but also the social and economical aspects of the climate crisis. So one can say we live in an economic and ecological tongues crisis. And by only reducing the carbon dioxide emission, as our government leaders are discussing this topic, it is not done. Especially the marginalized, young and poor workers. They are the ones who suffer from this crisis.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you so much. One last sentence. I think we need to make the employers accountable and responsible for all this crisis. And I cannot do this alone. We have to do this in unity. We are so strong, and we can really make everything if we stand together in concert and really fight together in unity. Then we can change the world. Thank you so much, honorable colleagues.
Thank you. Again, great representation from our youth committee. Next, Laurent Berger from CFDT France. Welcome.
Chers camarades, chers frères et sœurs, que de chocs avons-nous vécu depuis Copenhague? Une pandémie qui a mis le monde à l'arrêt, une guerre, une autre guerre, une guerre de plus, une guerre atroce menée par la Russie contre l'Ukraine et qui entraîne une crise énergétique et une crise alimentaire. Et enfin, le changement climatique, toujours et encore, dont nous voyons les effets dévastateurs chaque jour. Ces événements et leurs conséquences ont mis à nu les limites de nos modèles économiques et une mondialisation sans discernement. Le monde ne peut plus ignorer l'injustice du modèle économique dominant et l'impact de notre activité sur la planète. L'ère où la seule recherche de profit, de l'exploitation irréfléchie des richesses naturelles et des égoïsmes nationaux est révolue. Nous devons réinventer nos modèles économiques en remettant l'humain au centre et la durabilité comme impératif. Des modèles plus respectueux des travailleurs et plus porteurs de progrès sociaux. C'est le défi qui se pose à nous les syndicalistes, partout dans le monde. Les transitions en cours numériques et écologiques s'imposent à nous à défaut d'avoir été anticipées. Il nous incombe donc de nous inscrire dans une transition juste. Et une transition juste, c'est quoi? C'est une justice dans la répartition équitable du poids des mutations, de ces mutations, et l'adhésion de tous, citoyens, travailleurs, consommateurs, entreprises et investisseurs. Une transition juste, c'est une réhabilitation de l'action publique, des services publics et de l'impôt, outil essentiel pour plus de justice sociale. La justice, c'est aussi une réelle protection sociale pour tous. C'est une autre répartition des richesses et une réorientation des ressources financières publiques et privées en faveur des investissements et accompagnements indispensables à cette transition. C'est ce que nous attendons de la CSI et de la future équipe. Mais la transition juste, ce n'est pas seulement la justice dans la transition, c'est surtout la transition vers un monde plus juste, parce que la transition doit être démocratique. Elle doit même s'accompagner d'un supplément de démocratie. Chaque voix doit pouvoir être entendue, en particulier la voix des plus défavorisés, parce que personne ne doit être sacrifié dans le processus de mutation et parce que chacun doit pouvoir peser dans la construction du monde de demain. Plus encore, la transition doit être négociée à tous les échelons où elle impactera les citoyens et les travailleurs. Parce que cette transition devra naître d'un compromis démocratique mobilisant tous les acteurs, chacun d'entre nous. Et la démocratie, chers camarades, est un bien précieux qui ne cesse d'être attaqué. Tous les reculs démocratiques sont des reculs pour les droits des travailleurs. Partout dans le monde, les populistes et les droites extrêmes surfent sur les crises pour saper la démocratie et asseoir leur discours rétrograde ou leur pouvoir autoritaire. Partout où ils gouvernent, les droits reculent, ceux des travailleurs, ceux des femmes, ceux des migrants ou ceux des minorités. Nous devons lutter contre leurs discours de haine. Nous devons bâtir un autre projet de société. Et nous devons être en solidarité avec tous nos camarades emprisonnés. Mes camarades, soyons mobilisés. Il n'y aura aucun repos pour les dictateurs ou oppresseurs tant qu'un de nos collègues syndicalistes sera emprisonné. Et pour cela, pour tous ces défis, nous devons avoir une confédération syndicale internationale unie. C'est la seule voie pour réussir. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much. L.A. Rosita Silaban, the KSBSI Indonesia, and Sister Toni Moore, you will be next. Welcome. And while we prepare, may I just give a reminder, we are missing headsets. I know nobody wants to take those home, but please check your bags, and when you leave the auditorium, please make sure you return the headsets. We are missing about 20 headsets, so please make sure that you check all of your bags. Thank you. Sister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I try only 3 minutes. Brothers and sisters, the world we live today is not the same anymore. A changing and uncertain world requires a new generation of social contract, particularly in labor laws, social protection, policies inform universal protection coverage. People want social and economic systems that work for everyone, not for certain people. People want their human rights and fundamental freedoms to be respected. They want a say in the decisions that affect their lives. The rising number of people with non-traditional work relationship or non-standard employment should questioning by trade unions. Many workers are not classified as workers, such as platform digital workers, that have no legal protection due to their employment status, whether they are legally employees or just independent contractors. We need to close the gaps by a new social contract to guarantee every worker has right to labor protection without distinction their status and type of employment. For instance, the growing of the platform workers as new type of work without legal employment status has disrupted concept of industrial relation or social dialogue, has treated the target of decent work agenda of SDGs. So here I propose number of policy action that ITUC important to be taken. The role the government police become crucial. We have to make sure there's active state involvement or ability to enforce labor laws and prosecute violators by don't let the workers are left to the hand greedy capitalism. The country should have an employment policy that aims to limit growing precarious work by determining threshold level of precarious work. For union, we have to continue to enlarge and organize and enlarge union membership because member is our power. Without good representation or little members, union will lose a good result. I would like also to stressing up the element of just transition as to respond the climate change and its mitigation measure all over the world. In many countries that are now quite progressive to cut carbon emission as the commitment to stay below 2 degrees Celsius came with number of policy programs that has been bringing huge impact for employment. Workers are again at risk with not sufficient mitigation to face it. Job losses, proper information to the access the mitigation for the job transition, skill development, social protection scheme, and integration through appropriate social dialogue are the elements we need to strengthen and push the multi-stakeholder to respect and take necessary action. But we, trade union, the most part to be ready for capacity building of members and union leaders, and at global level to ask the social dialogue mechanism to address it as the basis for national level in taking follow-up action, the urgent action to count workers' representative in a more appropriate social dialogue. Therefore, we call for a new social contract to accommodate it immediately for stronger workers all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Tony Moore, welcome from BWU Barbados.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. At the 4th ITUC World Congress, when we committed to building workers' power through a new social contract, we never anticipated that a COVID-19 pandemic would compound other crises to worsen an already deep employment crisis, widen inequalities, and increase socioeconomic insecurity. We could not contemplate that where post-crisis recovery requires more than ever increased social spending and public investment to trigger job creation, that lack of financing access to many countries would slow economic growth, causing workers and their families to lose confidence in public mandates and institutions, including workers' institutions, that appear not to be delivering for them fast enough. All this puts at risk the achievement of a new social contract, our focus for the next few days. A growing informal economy is calling out to us for a renewed social contract that provides income security and that brings dignity to the worker. They stand in need of an output from this Congress that translates words into decent work, that brings purpose and promotes their inclusion. And we must deliver in an environment where we recognize that structural changes in the world of work have diminished our collective voice. Our plan to tackle informality will require us to move beyond expanding the coverage of social protection and organizing workers in informal employment. We must look to see where we can advocate for incentives to ensure that core labor rights are respected and are extended to businesses, including the self-employed, who observe good practices as it relates to guaranteeing rights and social protection. but we must be able to work our way to the table. We cannot afford to negotiate deals after they have been made. In my own country, I chose to maintain my trade union leadership while becoming a backbencher, but more so a labor conscience to the government. And in less than 2 years, Barbados has, among other things, introduced a national minimum wage during COVID, expanded safety and health legislation to include medical examinations for workers in hazardous conditions such as gas station attendants, and is in an advanced stage of laying before Parliament a trade union recognition bill and more vigorous public contracts clauses. Sharon, in the lead up to the 4th ITUC Congress, you reminded us that in a fractured world where people feel insecure, it will take workers' power and intergenerational solidarity to win the fight. This is needed now more than ever, and as unions, we must resist the tendency, therefore, to fight each other for turf, and instead work on devising meaningful ways to strengthen solidarity across and within our own borders. Working people must know that when other institutions are failing them, that the union is standing strong. We know that not every instance of suffering gets the same coverage as Ukraine, but our brothers in Yemen, Ethiopia, Congo, and in my own region, Haiti, just to name a few, are experiencing more suffering as a result of the disruption in Ukraine, and also need our constant solidarity as more than just a side event. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies magnified 1,000-fold. We must bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever.
Thank you. Next, we have Brother Sahur Awan from PWF Pakistan. Welcome. And Hans Eric, you're on deck.
Thank you, Kathy. Let me, in the outset, congratulate Sister Sharon Barrow and her team for preparing such very comprehensive Congress statement which focus on a new social contract. Of course, this is a fundamental requirement as transformation in prevailing neoliberalism and corporate-dominated global economy. The target set out in this Congress statement for a new social contract is very important, which Sister Sharon already briefed this Congress this morning. But more importantly, on the crisis side, we should not forget of the COVID, which brought as a new guest, without invited guest, has died almost millions of persons and families, but also those they were made around 100,000 jobless. Climate change is also another crisis for which we have to think in future and to make concrete steps on behalf of trade union movement worldwide. Because in Pakistan, we are the victims from my own country on the recent floods there. Those workers in the informal sector of the flood affectees, they don't have any sin they have committed, but only for what they had, that they were workers there and were victims of the climate change. More importantly, when we see on the Congress statement, occupational safety and health, and we were able to get two more fundamental rights of the conventions, but for that purposes, a concrete steps are needed for that how implementation of those conventions and its proper ratification by the member state is done. Wages, a lot of things had been that we are still incorporate in terms of the poverty wages. Decent wages is a far dream in which many countries have signed under ILO, the Decent Work Country Program agenda. Jobs with rights, still forced labor, child labor, discrimination in employment, and more particularly with the rights of 87 and 98 ratification of the convention giving workers freedom of association and right of collective bargaining. Because we see still these two conventions less ratified, although these are the core of the sub-core convention, because when you have a union, you have a collective bargaining agreement, then it takes care of for the rest of the other core area, definitely occupational safety and health, in terms of discrimination, in terms of forced labor, in terms of child labor.
Thank you,
Last
brother.
point from my side is again on poverty, because rhetoric saying us that rich becoming richer and poor becoming poorer. Despite spectacular rise in the global income, we still face that 1/5 of the population of this world still goes to their bed hungry every night. 1/4 is still subject to abject living and working condition, even worse than those they were prevailing more than 137 years ago, which prompted the workers in the shito of Chicago to come out and to claim their workplace rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have just time for 2 more speakers before we're going to have Sharon respond to the morning's debate. Apologies, we have a long list, so we will definitely get to everybody tomorrow. And next we have Hans. Eric, welcome.
Thank you. Dear sisters and brothers, we gather here in Melbourne during difficult times for our world. The rule-based world order is under pressure, and democratic values are being challenged by authoritative ideologies and far-right doctrines. The ever-present threat of climate changes, wars and poverty is growing, while the number of democracies in the world are declining. These challenges call for a strong trade union movement that promotes the banner of solidarity, democracy, and global cooperation. YS Norway's position is that the document can be clearer on the democratic structure in the trade union movement. We need to stress the trade union role in building prosperity and democracy through our independence. The ITUC's Declaration of Principles clearly states as follows, and I quote, "The Confederation exists to unite and mobilize the democratic and independent forces of world trade unionism in giving the effective representation to working people." I truly believe that the Congress statement should reflect the clarity of our Constitution on this matter. YS Norway proposes to underline the importance of trade unionism as an independent and a vital force for democracy and progress in the Congress statement. This has been the case in country after country throughout history. It was the case when Solidarność in Poland became the first independent trade union, and through their call for the right to organize, promoted freedom and democracy behind the Iron Curtain. It was also the case when Cesar Chavez dedicated his life to social dialogue and collective bargaining in the United States, resulting in improved civil rights, wage contracts, and safer working conditions. I'm asking the Congress to take into consideration adding the description democratic and independent trade unions in point 2 of the draft statement, both as a recognition of the trade union heritage and to emphasize the work that needs to be done going forward. Democracy and workers' rights go hand in hand. The trade union movement, independency, and democratic structure is vital for our success in the future. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're now calling Petra Ulster from the Netherlands. Petra will be our last speaker before I call Sharon. Apologies to those not called this morning, but they will be top of the list tomorrow. Petra, please go ahead.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. What a joy to see you here in Melbourne at our 5th Congress, World Congress. I would like to begin. I first want to thank Sharon for her relentless effort to make the ITUC the worldwide trade union movement as we know it, a movement highly visible and with a seat and voice at many tables. As FMV, we support the call for the ITUC for a new social contract as a response to the various crises that we are facing. As a trade union movement, we have been fighting for social welfare achievements for over 100 years, and in many ways we were and are successful. However, over the recent years, we have seen that due to the neoliberal agenda, cutbacks, privatization, and deregulations, all these achievements have come under attack. We need to organize, and we need to fight to countervail this trend, not only to protect, but also to extend and build upon our human and labor rights. Talking about a new social contract implies that we want to live in a society where everyone can realize their ambition in and with freedom. Freedom of opinion, of religion, and sexual identity. A society where equality and inclusivity of all is the norm. It means a society where democracy is effective and where every group, every minority is heard and seen. We therefore cannot stress enough the importance of women, youth, and LGBTIQ colleagues in the trade union movement. Women, who form more than half of the workers worldwide, still experience many forms of discrimination. We support all actions at all levels to eliminate discriminations against women. We call for an inclusive trade union movement, which is active for all of us, also for our LGBTIQ fellow workers. And of course, our young workers, who are the leaders of the future. Young people in particular have been heavily impacted with high level of youth unemployment, the prevalence of precarious employment arrangements, and even the absence of any employment contract at all. We support the call of the ITUC for creating decent jobs for young workers. As international trade unions, we need to keep up the joint fight to end all discrimination and all repression, everywhere in the world and at every work floor. United, we can. United, brothers and sisters, together we can, because together we are invincible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the speakers. We will continue with the list, and now we will hear from Sharon Burrow in response.
So, you know, my job's really easy today. There were no amendments, and in fact, all speakers simply deepened the areas of commitment we must fight for in terms of a new social contract. And I just want to list them very quickly. Dignified retirement incomes, human and labour rights, solidarity with women in places like Iran, ending the war in Ukraine, and of course solidarity with Ukrainian workers. The questions from Iraq of unfinished democratic transition, democracy generally, and how to rebuild trust and strength in our democracies, insecure work, poor conditions, and the fact that affiliates need to be visible in these fights to make sure members understand that they are their advocates. The question of due diligence in supply chains, and Yasmin, let me pay tribute to the German government and the DGB for actually delivering legislation in addition to France, which starts us on this journey. But we need to do much more, and I loved your commitment to sanctions. Discrimination absolutely needs to be ended. Young workers, platform business, insecure work, great call from Brother Reddy. Organising absolutely. Workers' power, central to delivery, and the solidarity we must show with others. Women's rights, unity, public services, peace, poverty, elimination of poverty from Sahor, and of course, Petra says it all. United we can, united we are invincible. Thank you very much for a great morning.
Thank you, Sharon, and thanks to all of you for a great morning. Please remember to return your headsets when you leave. This afternoon, there's going to be regional caucuses. They're actually happening now. And then we have two different forums happening. In this room, there will be a forum on global shocks that will start. And then we will also have another forum on organizing. And then tomorrow, we ask that you get here at 9 a.m. On the dot so we can get a special message from President Biden. And so we look forward to starting the Congress off tomorrow with an important message from the President. Have a great day, and we look forward to the continued debates here at the Congress. Thank you.